Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the Bar Advisory Group meeting. This is the second quarterly meeting of the Bar Advisory Group. Today is Thursday, April 19th, 2018. We're meeting at the Department of Consumer Affairs hearing room in Sacramento. My name is Patrick DeRay. I'm Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I want to welcome everyone who's in attendance today. We have a very largely attended meeting, I think in part probably because of some of the agenda items, but we also have some guests here from the Bureau of Automotive Repair's field offices. I wanted to welcome our field office supervisors from the 12 field offices throughout the state. If you could kind of raise your hands, guys. Yeah. They've been in town the last couple of days for a series of meetings with the Bureau of Automotive Repair's headquarters staff on case processing and some other items that we wanted to make sure we're all on the same page throughout the various offices and working with our headquarters staff. So we welcome them and glad that they were able to attend today's meeting. As we normally do, we'll do a round of introductions and start on this end with Megan.
Hi, good morning. I'm Megan McKernan, Auto Club of Southern California.
Keith Going, Inter-Industry Conference of Auto Repair.
Elisa Reinhart with the California New Car Dealers Association.
Jack Moladonna, representing the California Auto Body Association.
Gary Conover, representing the California Automotive Wholesalers Association.
Good morning, I'm Dave Kusa, Automotive Service Councils of California.
Pat DeRay again.
Ileana Butu, the board's legal counsel for today.
Good morning, Christy Babb with the Automotive Oil Change Association.
George Ritz with the California Automotive Teachers.
John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition.
Nikki Ayers, Independent Automotive Professionals Association.
Jeff Cox, Automotive Maintenance Repair Association.
Good morning, I'm Vince Gregory, AAA Northern California.
Thank you all. And as you've noticed probably from the last meeting or two, we've had a few changes in the makeup of the advisory group. We've had a couple of resignations. Jonathan Morrison has taken a position with the Trump administration, and he's legal counsel with NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And I believe Rosemary Shahan had also resigned her spot on the advisory group, but is looking and working with us to find a consumer advocate to replace her and her seat on the advisory group. We also want to welcome Gary Conover with the California Automotive Wholesalers Association as a new member to the advisory group. Christy Babb as well. I don't know if you've been here in the past, but this is your first one with the Oil Change Association. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started with our agenda. And Karen Nelson with the Director's Office here at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Karen is the Assistant Deputy Director with the Office of Board and Bureau Services, and she will have a couple of updates to provide us on departmental-wide activities, some of which might involve the Bureau of Automotive Repair.
Thank you, Chief. Chief DeRay, committee members. More. How's this? It is lit. How's that? Fantastic. Good morning. Karen Nelson, Assistant Deputy Director with Department of Consumer Affairs, Board and Bureau Services. I'm very thankful to be in front of you all today. It's been about almost 6 months since I've joined the department, and I've had the distinct pleasure of really working with 38 of our boards and bureaus, and so I'm happy to share some updates with the department. And the first thing I'd like to go ahead and update is staffing. On March 12th, we welcomed a new Deputy Director of Legislation, Dennis Cuevas Romero. Before coming to DCA, Cuevas Romero was Government Relations Director at the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association in Sacramento since 2016. He was legislative associate at Hernandez Strategy Group from 2013 and 2016, and a postgraduate law clerk at the Sacramento Regional Fair Housing Commission in 2012. I hope you welcome Mr. Cuevas Romero, and I'm sure that he will be working with our boards and bureaus as well as your bureau in working towards some priorities that you may have in the future. Later this month, on April 30th, the department will hold its second directors quarterly meeting with its board executive officers and bureau chiefs. These quarterly meetings are an opportunity to ensure that director is available to all of you to hear important issues facing the department and its boards and bureaus. At this upcoming meeting, we will provide an update on some key department issues such as pro rata and executive officer salary study. New to the DCA are licensing and enforcement work groups. On April 10th, we launched our first licensing and enforcement work group meeting, and I'd like to thank Chief DeRay for attending that. And our intention to hold those monthly meetings is to really dive deeper into the practices of our boards and bureaus and determine where we can find some strengths and some knowledge to share within our programs. And our hope is that it will strengthen our boards and bureaus in the areas of licensing and enforcement. With regard to our future leadership development program, I do know that you guys had Brian Clark who participated in that program, and they did just graduate the inaugural cohort in March. 12 individuals completed this 8-month leadership program, participating in special leadership development exercises, working on projects that could positively impact DCA, and also develop some working relationships and meeting with executives from our board and bureaus. Look out for communication from our solid team for the next cohort, and hopefully that you will have a representative from the bureau that would participate in that leadership program. And the last thing is our board member and executive boot camp. Solid also now offers additional training and team building specifically geared to board members, committee members, and bureau staff. And the courses are designed to improve interaction and facilitate cohesiveness within groups, provide a safe environment for communication, and build positive relationships by providing several unique tools and techniques. Committee members, board members, and executives can choose a customized series of course topics such as conflict styles, true colors, going from good to great, and leadership styles. So please do contact Solid if you'd like, or if you're interested in scheduling a training for any of those topics. And as always, if the department can be of service to the Bureau, let us know, and thank you for your work and your partnership.
Thank you, Karen. I'll open it up for a few questions or comments with respect to your comments. I think we have one getting prepared here. Jack, did you have a question or a comment?
I do. Thank you for your report. Jack Moladana from behalf of the California Auto Body Association. I had a question with regards to the BAR sunset review that took place, I think it was last month. I mean, time goes by fast here. And there were several issues that came up, but one of the issues that is an important issue to the industry has to do with this minor services issue. And I know there was some discussion on that, and one of the thoughts and ideas was that the department would carry some sort of legislation to provide authority to the BAR to look into this issue of minor services and determine which ones are minor, which ones should continue to be exempt. And I wanted to follow up with you on that. I know you didn't touch on it in your comments, but I wanted to find out where DCA is on this important issue.
Sure. We are aware that that was an issue that was brought up, and very much aware that those were part of the responses that were sent back to the legislature. I can definitely bring it back to the director's office and our ledge office and find out what path we take regarding that issue.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Other comments, questions? I'm just looking at the advisory group members first. I want to welcome Lou Anopolsky, who's joined us. Lou, good to see you. Was someone from the audience? Charlie Peters, yes. Please come forward. You have a binder that says stop on it. Okay. Now it just has a B on it. Okay.
Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals, Mr. DeRay, committee. This delightful lady sitting in front of you, and I don't know that I've had the pleasure of meeting her previously, but I have a serious problem with her organization because they don't give a damn about the consumers in the state of California. They have agreed to meet with me concerning a couple of issues that have been under consideration for years, and they don't care. They have agreed and said they will meet with me, but it's sorry, they have other things that are more important than the consumers in California. We've made suggestions, provided information at the meeting with the Department of, with the agencies with oversight, and we made the suggestion there, stop the California smog check. Stop the money coming from the consumers that are being used to destroy our cars and our future and the service industry, unless you're going to do something to fix this. I will say to this nice lady that I am sick and tired of getting the stroke job here. It's time for some action. Her boss has agreed to meet with me. He's either a freaking liar or needs to be replaced or needs to meet with me. One of those items. Thank you. Or let's stop all of this. Stop taking the public's money and do something that might make more fun than what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I am aware that the director's office has been in communication with you, and I think there is an effort to have some kind of dialogue or communication with you, and I'm certain that I'll be a part of those discussions, just like I was with the former director. Certainly welcome the dialogue with your office and you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. We'll move on. Thank you very much, Karen. I appreciate the update from the department. Well, something I failed to do, and my head's in a little bit of a fog. I'm kind of fighting a headache right now, but I wanted to introduce our executive staff. Doug Bellotti, Assistant Chief for the Bureau. Clay Leak, who's Deputy Chief for Smog Check Operations. We have a couple of vacant deputy chief positions. We're in the midst of the hiring process and hope to have a couple of announcements early next week at the latest. Our deputy chief for field operations and enforcement, Tim Corcoran, left somewhat unexpectedly in February of this year. About a year on the job and got a job offer that was too good to pass up. He is now executive director with the new Motor Vehicle Board, which is kind of housed and works kind of hand in hand with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So we congratulate Tim on his recent appointment, and his departure has left obviously the vacancy that we're looking to fill. We also have a vacant deputy chief for administrative operations that includes the oversight and kind of review of the operations of our consumer assistance program. That's the repair assistance and vehicle retirement operations of the Bureau. Our licensing division, which is responsible for all of the processing of the license applications, all automotive repair dealer registrations, smog check licenses, lamp and brake licenses, as well as the STAR certifications. So, and then the traditional administrative services or operations, such as the personnel office, our business services, facilities management, contracts, and the like. So that position hopefully will be filled as well in the next few days. All right. Moving on, our next, one other thing I forgot to do, and I should have done at the outset of the meeting, is announce that we are being webcast. The meeting is, I assume I should be hearing from Tracy Renee by now, but I haven't. And Tracy, if you can, send me a text to let me know that it's working. But if anyone wants to participate and ask a question or comment relative to the various presentations, they can do so at barmeeting@dca.ca.gov. That's barmeeting at dca.ca.gov. And if there's any questions about the audio in the room or anything like that, please talk to my assistant, Zach Richardson, or Matt Woodcheck, who's supporting us here from the department. Thank you, both of you. All right. Our next update is from Jaime Ramos with the Barfield Operations Enforcement Branch. He's going to give us an update on the press release that I think was sent out to all of the advisory group members relative to an operation that we had been working on since we last met in January. I think there was some feedback from the group, kind of along the lines of do more and get more information out there about the use of devices that are designed to undercut or cheat the smog check inspections. And so Jaime took that issue and that call to action to heart, and we had a fairly expansive statewide operation that he wants to give an update on.
Good morning, Chief DeRay. Good morning, advisory group members. Chief DeRay mentioned, everybody hear me okay? We did an enforcement operation recently, and I wanted just to provide a real quick update on it. I won't try to take up too much of the time. One better? Okay. So on April 4th, the bar conducted a statewide operation against smog check stations that we had suspected of using defeat devices to cheat on the smog check inspections. The list that we were provided came from engineering, and we are able to detect most of these type of inspections. So we created a list of these stations that were using these devices, and from that we assembled a team of 52 teams, we assembled an operation that included 52 teams of bar staff. The reason we had to do such a large number of teams is, and I'll kind of get to it in the forefront, but we assembled 52 teams because our objective was to reach as many of these targets at one time as possible. So we did it at 10 a.m. On April 4th, we hit 52 of our top targets. By the time we were going to our second or third shops, stations were already waiting for us pretty much with their feet up on the chair saying it took you long enough to get here. So we knew and we expected that. That's why we had to have such a large number of resources dedicated to doing it all at once and trying to make an impact in the industry. The 52 teams we took staff from all 12 field offices. So every single office contributed in one way or another by providing staff. And then this next slide, it just gives a real brief what we found and what we did out there. We ended up visiting 284 stations, and that's just that one-day operation with the 52 teams. We found a total of 16 OBD defeat devices. For those of you a little bit more familiar with these devices, there's what we call a bit flipper, which can change vehicle's data, and then there's also a more basic simulator, which can simulate the information from a vehicle. I believe that the numbers were about 9 and 7, so we found about 9 bit flippers and 7 simulators on there that the Bureau obtained. We also encountered 2 unlicensed technicians that were performing tests when we walked in and did not have a smog license, and there was not a licensed smog technician present anywhere in the building. So we had 2 stations that actually refused the Bureau's entry and or refused to let us inspect their equipment. We found 9 either tampered modified or other equipment issues with the Smog equipment. And then we ended up blocking out 13 stations for various reasons. So on the surface, on the surface, it may look like it's not successful, but I can sure tell you from the data from the day before the operation to the day after the operation, this was hugely successful. We made a huge impact in the industry. We've had several websites that were either promoting the use of these devices or selling these devices that have now been taken down. So I think they're in panic as well that we are onto who's providing and selling these type of devices on there. At a previous BAG meeting, we did a presentation on a tool that we used, certificate blocking for enforcement. And after the presentation, we received some feedback from advisory group that maybe the Bureau could do more to promote some of our enforcement efforts that we have out there, so that everybody can know what we're doing on there. So when we planned this operation, we took that feedback under advisement, and we actually did quite a bit of outreach on this particular operation. So as part of an outreach for this operation, we did a DCA press release, and we had DCA Office of Public Affairs did a great job. They sent out cameramen to a northern location and a southern location, and they provided they were able to obtain B-roll so that we could provide with the press release to the numerous media outlets. We also sent out an ET blast to all stations, advising them of what we were doing, what our goal was, and the key point also is that we asked for anybody that had information as to tips of who's using the devices, who's selling these devices, and so forth, that they could contact our help desk, and we opened up our help desk so that we can receive those type of tips. Again, that was kind of unprecedented. We'd never really done that before with an ET blast, but I can certainly say that was extremely successful in that part of it. The industry desk and our CIC hotline was also, the industry desk was part of the ET blast. The CIC hotline was part of a press release that we included a toll-free number that the public can call and provide tips of stations and or technicians that they suspect are using these type of devices as well. And then we plan on doing social media, or we're doing some social media, and we're going to be putting this video on our website on it. So again, to promote what we're doing it. We're really making a huge effort to eradicate the fraud in the smog check industry, as well as the general automotive repair industry, and want to level the playing fields for all the good shops that are doing it right and correctly. Questions?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. I don't know if you mentioned it, but just can you give a kind of a general sense of what happened with what we saw as far as the activity in the hours or days after the operation?
Yeah, the activity prior to this, we had a large number of stations that we had identified as potential users of these devices, and we were seeing this through our data. And the day after the operation, it's almost came to a screeching halt, non-existence. Maybe we had one or two stations that we could see by, so it made a real huge impact. As well as the days after the operations, we were blocking well over 100 tests. So what we did is when we did this operation, we went out, inspected the equipment, but we also put them on notice that the data that we are receiving back does not seem to be coming from a vehicle, and they need to stop whatever they're doing. And when we left that facility, we immediately turned on our certificate blocking to prevent the issuance of fraudulent smog certificates on that. So we were blocking well over 100 right after we did the operation, which previous to that we were not blocking, nowhere near that number. Have that many stations turned on for the certificate blocking.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Lou.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Lou.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how these devices work? You said there's a simulator and then something flip something.
So there's there's two types of devices. One is a simulator, which you can simulate a vehicle. Okay. The other type of device is what we call a bit flipper, and that pretty much takes the information from a vehicle and it's able to flip that information into passing information so that it would fraudulently pass a smog inspection.
Is this simulator, are these devices actually installed in the car?
No.
But they're used basically to bypass the car and provide false data to the bar?
Some can be used in lieu of a car. Others are used in between the and the actual testing platform.
Thank you.
Yeah, in that case, the information that's coming from the inspection equipment is being manipulated from the vehicle before it gets to the equipment device that's taking the emissions readings from that vehicle's computer and actually manipulating the information or data. It's kind of in the middle of that whole operation or that whole inspection.
And there's actually a manufacturer or manufacturers that create this equipment?
Oh, yes. We have some, on our press release, when we released our press release, part of our video footage and some still photography, we have some examples of the devices that we encounter.
Jim, you had a question?
I did. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm glad the BAR is out there trying to promote fairness and a level playing field and getting the bad guys. I want to follow up on Lou's question because that's interesting about this device. I'm sure, so there's nothing illegal about selling these devices, right? Anyone can buy them on the internet, I guess?
It's when they start using them for a smog inspection that's where it becomes illegal.
So someone can own one, but that's not illegal. Is that correct? Okay.
I'm aware of that.
Just fascinating how that works. My understanding is that the BAR with online and they're so sophisticated now that can you not tell if someone is using a simulator or one of these flip switches when they're doing a smog check?
Yes, most of the time we can't tell.
So you can tell at that time, and so that's when you do the certificate blocking. Is that how it works? Because I'm not really clear that how are they getting away with this if you can't stop them?
Well, there's a couple reasons, and that would be that we can identify it usually after the fact. We can see, okay, that the test that was performed yesterday, this type of device was used on it. As well as we don't have every station turned on for certificate blocking because our bandwidth would just going to keep up with that. So we have to limit to the ones that we are turning certificate blocking on to the ones that we have identified that have already been using.
Okay. And one last question: out of these 284 stations, how many? Do you know how many were star stations? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we certainly can get that data. Yeah. Garrett, do you have anything to add to any of this discussion? In response to any of the questions that have come up. Garrett's chief of the engineering branch.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the stations that are perpetrating fraud right now are star stations. We have some, there's some holes in the regulation that need to be fixed. We have regulations in process right now to address that. Some of the stations, what they're doing is enforcement will go out and shut a station down. Then they'll move the operation to a new station. They'll start up a new station with a brand new technician that doesn't have an FPR score. And then they'll use that to create a new, as soon as they get star certified, which doesn't take a whole lot if you have a no score right now. Then they'll move forward and get the star certification and immediately start turning the crank really hard on day 2 when they have their star certification. So you'll see a station go from really very little, just a trickle volume. And then all of a sudden they're doing 60, 70, 80 inspections a day in some cases. And that doesn't follow your traditional business models. So yeah, they're really going to town. And so the STAR program right now, when you get the new regs in place, it puts a wall in their ability to do some of that, because all of a sudden somebody has to have an FPR score. Somebody has to have earned a score over time. And then they've got to have that score they're willing to sacrifice. And so we think that's going to really help address that situation.
So out of that 284 stations, you're saying a majority of them were STAR stations?
I'm guessing that a majority are. It's not a vast majority, but yeah, I mean some of the worst performing stations in the state are STAR certified right now.
Yeah, that's just surprising, because they're supposed to be the highest, right? And they're the ones that are the majority of the fraudsters here, or from what you described, and that's just
so what we've seen
counterintuitive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what we've seen in the STAR program is that actually for the vast majority of stations, because this is one of the things we're legislatively required is to evaluate how the program is doing. One of the things we've seen is that for most stations, their performance under the STAR program has improved really pretty dramatically. And then we have this subset of stations, it's a relatively smaller percentage, that they're in the business for no other reason than to commit fraud. And in fact, enforcement, when they turn on cert blocking at some of these stations, it's interesting to watch. Some of these stations, without any enforcement action beyond turning on cert blocking, they just close up shop and go away. And so that's their whole purpose of being there. And so it's just dealing with that. The STAR program works for incentivizing the vast majority to do a good job. Then it just takes hardcore enforcement to address this other group that really doing their most to do their worst.
Yeah, move a follow-up.
Patrick, this may be for you or for Jaime, I'm not sure. One of the cases that the bar is seeking to certify as precedential is this Daryl Bone contracting case that originates out of San Diego, OAH. It looks like they were using simulator devices in that case. Is this the defeat device that we're talking about? Jaime, do you know the case I'm talking about?
I believe so. That was a simulator use.
Okay, so it's the same thing that was going on in this San Diego case that you guys were doing the statewide operation on.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because they actually, this case talks about two different simulators, and it looks like they mention them almost by a brand name. So it looks like something that you could buy off the shelf someplace.
Yeah, so I think like Jack mentioned before, it's not illegal to buy one of these devices. It's only become illegal when you're using it to fraudulently certify.
Is there a legal use for them though? Is there something that why would somebody want to buy a device like that other than to try to create?
We actually use a number of these devices in the process of certification of equipment. There's legitimate reasons for the simulators, at least from our standpoint. In the station environment, they shouldn't have these devices. For the bit flipper, as Jaime was talking about, those devices, there's no legitimate use for them other than to cheat an emissions inspection program. And so those are in a little bit different category. But again, stations should not have this equipment. And we're starting to work on some new regulations that we're going to try to clarify that in the regulations that this is equipment that you may not have in the station to make it more clear our authority on that.
Well, in the case of the bit flipper, it doesn't even require the vehicle to be present. You can just send a
the bit flipper does.
Well, no, there's
the simulator.
Early generations of it did not. Now the newer generations are actually more sophisticated and don't even require the vehicle to be present. Sorry, thank you for the correction.
Is that VIN flip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
Bits.
Yeah,
bits of information, I guess, or data, right?
Yeah, you think about data being
flipper.
Yeah, like bits and bytes.
Okay.
So data is being transferred, from the vehicle to the computer. And most of the data passes through without any modification whatsoever. And then just the bits of information, so it's got a DTC set, they'll just correct that piece of information. And that makes it really hard to detect the vehicle because everything else you're seeing from the vehicle looks good. It looks like it should be looking. And so that's the issue we're having is as new devices are rolling out, we're always having to detect the device, eventually find it some way or another, and then we start to characterize it, and then we could implement cert blocking at that point. But it's a real game of cat and mouse right now. So in the new regulations we're working on, some of it is to improve our ability to respond quickly to these threats that are hurting the program.
Carol, and then I'll get
A
over here.
question, Jaime, on this. When you do the cert blocker, is there a way to go beyond that and temporarily suspend the technician's license until there's a decision on what happened? And I realize what you're saying. In some cases, the shop just disappears, and then they go operate somewhere else. But ultimately, there's a license to this technician that's performing the smog that leads right back to the person that's continues to do this illegal activity.
Well, the avenue that we have now would probably be to seek like an interim suspension order. And at one point we were doing that, but we were doing so many that it wasn't very expeditious to get the. So working with engineering, they came up with blocking, so at least we can make at least stop the behavior now. We file our case, and then process or criminal.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa.
From what you've seen out in the field, how many consumers would you say are going to these kind of places on purpose because they know their cars won't pass and this is the only way that they can get their car through?
I think there's a lot of consumers, and I think there's probably a lot of used car lots that are probably going through there. Some of the stuff that we've seen, we've walked into shops and they have a huge, 10 pages of VIN numbers that they're just performing the test and the vehicle's not even present. I doubt that all those are consumers, but we know that there probably is consumers out there that are seeking this type of, action. Back in the past, we used to say a fraudulent smog inspection was probably running about $250. When we did this operation, I think that, because supply and demand, there's so much supply out there for these illegal smogs that we're hearing the price is like $100, $150 now. The numbers on this operation really don't convey the huge impact that we have made on there and the information that we were able to gather. Yes, we gathered 16 devices, but there's numerous other, we showed up to a shop, the technician grabs equipment, throws it in a bag, and they take off running and leave their entire station open. What do you think's in that bag that they would have to leave everything just out in the open like that? We've had people that are on probation that were using the devices. So obviously, we're going to proceed with, revoking their registration, revoking their probation on that. So a lot of stuff like that. We've also gathered a lot of intel. We hear there's almost like a sublet. If I need a fraudulent smog, I call a number, somebody comes up and they test it, using my license, but they have the device to do it. This is all new and upcoming information. So we gathered a lot of valuable information that our enforcement team is going to use to. Don't want to divulge everything, obviously, because not only the good people, but the bad shops are also listening as well.
One thing I think that it may not be clear either. When he talks about visiting 284 stations, and you got 16, it sounds like, well, there's a lot of stations maybe that were caught in the net that really weren't doing anything. No, we have data. All those 284 stations were using it. So it's not like this was a limited problem. And as Jaime says, it was very effective at stopping the behavior. It's just that this is an ongoing, fire that we're fighting all the time.
Well, the operations were done with the intent to perform a station inspection as our statutory authority to perform these. We did not have search warrants or anything like that. So the fact that you got 16 devices, I think, pretty amazing that they handed them over to you.
And like I said, I think the additional stuff that we gathered aside from the devices makes it that much more valuable and forward.
Another question or comment from Jeff?
Was this a one-time operation, or does this become part of a cadence of audits?
This was a one-time enforcement operation, and I've been with Bureau 18 years. This is probably the largest single-day enforcement operation that we've done under my tenure here on it. So the need was there. We had to do it. We had to, the number of stations utilizing these devices was just, we were working to address it on the back end, but we had to do something to stop the behavior immediately. It's really not fair when you have a good reputable Smog shop right next to a shop that's using these type of devices, and the industry gets a bad rap because of the one shop that's right there. So, and that's our responsibility to try to eradicate this fraud from the Smog chicken.
Another fun fact too is that if you're stuck answering phones from the help desk, you roll out a program like this that impacts a huge number of stations and really literally thousands of consumers, you think that you'd get a bunch of complaints. You turn on stations, you don't hear a peep from the station. Occasionally you might hear from a motorist, but generally if you talk to them, you kind of get a sense that they kind of know what's going on. We just don't get a lot of pushback from the industry on this program.
Not one single complaint so far.
Nikki, yours.
I might be naive about this, but could this device be installed and a technician not know it?
I didn't.
Could this device be installed and a technician not know it's installed? I don't know.
Well, you got to keep in mind, is it possible? It may be possible, but these devices we're talking about are $8,000 to $10,000. I just don't know many consumers that have $8,000 to $10,000 to shove underneath their desk.
I had no idea.
I surely don't.
I have no idea.
I mean, it's possible that someone can do something like that, and certainly the attorney that represents a lot of these cases has argued that. It's one of the things that technicians should be inspecting for. They should be looking for obvious signs of tamper in that nature. But yeah, as Jaime said, there's no indication that this is happening. Generally, if a behavior like that was occurring, you'd see a random smattering throughout the industry because it's the consumers doing it and they're just taking their cars in. What the data show is that, in fact, it's specific stations, this station, this station, this station. And so it's a station behavior, not a motorist behavior.
And generally, I mean, we don't file on one particular, just because there was one incident of improper inspection or fraudulent inspection on it. Normally we have a numerous. So again, the argument of, so these 10 or 20 consumers each happen to put this device and happen to go to your station, it's just a very viable explanation in our opinion.
Others? Lou again.
Yeah, Nikki, that was one of the arguments that was made in that Arrow Bone contracting case that we were just talking about, that the defense lawyer argued that the technician didn't know that the device had been installed in the car or something to that effect. The judge basically disbelieved the testimony. No way the technician could not have known that.
So I'll get to that issue at the end of the meeting about the upcoming hearings next week, but thank you for pointing that out. I'll do that under the public comment on items not on the agenda, but just thank you for the pointing out that case, because we do want to make reference to it and the other one that we'll be hearing next week. Others, questions, comments? Charlie, Peters.
Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals, representing motorists. I truly have to congratulate you, Mr. DeRay, and this gentleman, taking some action to some way address this issue. I think there is a significant missing piece in this puzzle. That is that perception that technology and laws make this all work, not true. Never has been true and never will be true, because people can game any system put in front of them forever and always will. But people can be managed in a way that can change behaviors and create performers rather than frauds and cheats. The gentleman who is sitting in this seat where I'm sitting at this moment, in my opinion, needs to either get an education or be removed from his position, and totally ignoring the issue of the people part of this and only paying attention to technology solutions. And I think he either needs to be replaced or needs an education to create some other possibilities to work on making this work better. It doesn't work and is never going to work unless we have a system that provides opportunity for people to change their behavior and improve their performance and become a part of the system, rather than a continuation of how many bad guys did we get, and we never going to get all the bad guys because everybody's a bad guy. I met with the Bureau of Automotive Repair a long time ago with a 4-question quiz on how to do a smog check, all of which were absolutely specifically in the manual saying exactly what the rule was. We asked the gentleman in charge of undercover runs for the state of California. He was there and he wanted us to ask him the 4 questions. I said, no, I prefer not to do that. I've asked 300 people at the Bureau of Automotive Repair regulators these 4 questions, and there wasn't one of them that passed. Not one. Simple questions in the book that were plain and simple. So when nobody even knows the rules, we're going to fix this with some technology and some changes at the legislature. Never going to happen. So I suggest we start with eliminating the gentleman sitting here, or getting his attention on incorporating people into the process as well, and work on actually making this work better on a long term, rather than creating some PR for the legislature, some PR for the system, and the people trying to eliminate the Bureau of Automotive Repair and eliminate the consumers and eliminate the service industry. Not acceptable to me, Mr. DeRay.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, he works for me. I guess ultimately I take responsibility for all of his work, so you and I will have a discussion about that, and your feelings about the performance of his or my job at a later time. Thank you. Bud Rice. I'm going to go with Bud.
Good morning, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. My understanding is the original, where these equipment came from originally was with Volkswagen. No, it's just a joke. I'm sorry. Sorry. Couple of comments. One is, you guys suspected that 284 stations or shops were kind of on this list. And out of that, you had 16 that you found with the defeat devices. Were there other parameters that made you think about these 284, or did you expect the 284 to be using?
Oh, these 284 were definitely using devices. So yes, we were expecting that.
Catch them also using these devices. Okay. And for whatever the reason was, the days you guys were in there getting them, you didn't find those devices there.
Yes, and I mean, obviously these devices, they keep them in cabinets or something, and they bring them out as needed when they have a vehicle that's failing, and you have a consumer or a used car lot or somebody, a customer that wants to pay the money to get it fraudulently certified, then they pull it out, they use the device, and catching them is and like I said, really, I think those numbers kind of are attributed to the 52 teams that we hit originally, because my staff were reporting back by the time they made it to the second, definitely by the third, they were waiting for us. So obviously they're not going to have any device out. Everything was put away, and they're doing the test all, properly and by the book. So, that's why we had to encompass so much resources to try to hit everybody at one time.
Last comment was, occasionally there's also more to the story. And even in terms of these 2 line items, stations refuse the inspection, unlicensed technicians, and station lockouts, there may be more to the story that would be nice to hear. As an example, unlicensed technicians, is if the next comment could have been, the licensed technician wasn't even on site and this guy was using that guy's license, that's an interesting story. Or the guy was in the car running the RPM up while the guy was grabbing a soda from the soda machine. That's also an interesting story, but it's different. It's different between the two. And then in terms of the station lockouts, what was the cause of the station lockout? Because we caught them using a device, or they didn't have the proper licenses displayed on the board, so they ended up getting locked out. The guy was on vacation, so there was no licensed technician time of the inspection, so they got locked out. What, a little bit deeper as the story as to why some of these things have occurred, I think could help the audience a little bit.
No, I think that'd be great. Initially, this is going to be like a 5-minute presentation, and I truly see that the feedback that we received at our last presentation of wanting to hear more about it is I think we'll go back to the drawing board and keep that in mind for future stuff on it. We were trying to keep it very short, and we can expand on it. I can answer a few of the questions. Unlicensed technicians, I believe both of those were there was no licensed technician around or in the actual building, so that would probably one of the ones that we would lead to a lockout, because nobody's around. We don't know who this person is, so we have to secure the equipment that's there, so we have to do that. That kind of segues into the lockouts. There's a couple shops where the technician, and we don't know if they were a licensed technician or not, they grabbed some stuff, they took off running and left the entire building open. Our staff can't sit there all day and secure the building, so what we do is we lock out all the equipment and we leave a station inspection report advising them for the owner to please give us a call. And that's our way of securing the equipment. Somebody walks in, they can't say, I wasn't here, you left my building open. Well, whoever your employee, whoever was in that building took off running. So we had several of those, so those led to lockouts. We also had equipment, whether you have equipment malfunction or something of that nature that was not working correctly, then that would also lead to a lockout. But certainly I understand, and I think in the future we can expand and be a little bit more specific. Now we know that would.
Thank you, Bob. I told you, more slides. That's the trick.
Zach?
Any other comments? I'm not gonna, if you want to comment on something different, I don't want you disparaging my staff in a public meeting, Charlie, but you have us, and we can have a discussion about all of that offline. But if you have another comment, I'll take it, but it sounds like Nikki or John does.
We, in the past bag meetings, we talked about this issue with used cars and the consumer complaints that the Bureau is fielding on these used cars that are bought, where shortly after they drive off the lot with no warranty, the indicator light goes on, and next thing they know, they've got all kinds of major repairs that need to be done. I just wonder if the Bureau has done any type of testing to correlate that with these shops that are doing these illegal smogs and selling these vehicles and doing this for car lots to get these vehicles passed.
Well, as far as the car lots, we I don't know if we've ever addressed it, but we are addressing the issue by doing go to used car lots and do inspections to make sure that the vehicles that are being offered for sale are smog compliant. And I think we did a presentation at a bag meeting before, and the numbers are very outstanding. Garrett was up here earlier. There's probably not one day that Garrett is in my office or I'm in his office and we discuss all these types of issues. We're looking at the data deeper. So we're trying to find where these vehicles are coming from. We're trying to find, when we go do these used car lot inspections, we compare that data with data that engineering has, and we try to make the correlation of what used car lots are using, stations that are doing fraudulent inspections on it, and making the connection. So us as enforcement can go and follow up on that. So it's a very good partnership that we have with engineering to try to identify where the demand is coming from.
Part of the problem is there's not good information because the cars aren't actually signing onto the pink slip in the middle of the transaction. So we don't have a good way to say these guys over here, we're certified for this used car lot over here. Enforcement's having to kind of just, all together. It's a tough analysis.
Is there any way to do a correlation working with the DMV on those types of things?
Yeah, we're always working with DMV on this stuff. In fact, we're recently increase the amount of data we're pulling from DMV, and we're getting that integrated to a point where we can actually look at it. It'll help us to identify, I mean, part of the fraud issues we deal with are on the, the station network side, and part of it are people getting through the system on the getting their vehicles registered when there was no actual smog check performed. And so we're working with DMV right now to kind of track that down and figure out how people are finding ways through the maze without getting all the proper inspections done on the vehicle.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's an ongoing effort that we're working really hard on.
Somebody else? I'm trying to move on to our next agenda item. And Charlie, one final comment?
Mr. DeRay, Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals, I have in my hand a letter which was initially sent to our governor, subsequently sent to the president, specifically addressing issues that do or don't include people in the process of the management. This I'll put in the record if you like, specifically talking about a direct conversation between the number 2 person at Fed EPA in person in Washington, D.C., one-on-one, as well as a meeting that took place in Ontario, California, agreeing to a pilot study to start within 45 days in 93. We're still waiting for the 45 days to be up, specifically talking about how do we improve the performance here with issues other than, in addition to issues of technology, that we think need to be incorporated, and that's the reason we're encouraging you to have further conversations with your staff to produce the possibility of that taking place. Thank you, Mr. DeRay.
Well, thank you very much, Charlie. I'll get a copy of that. All right, we'll move on. I just wanted to let you know that the webcast is working. Thank you, Tracy Renee, for validating that with a good morning and smiley-faced emoji. And then I asked if she was watching in. She said, yes, watching all you lovely people. Another smiley face emoji. No teeth this time, but love the certificate blocking. And on the subject of females in the industry, I wanted to point out that the department has just released its quarterly publication, The Consumer Connection, and the lead article of Female Mechanics Fuel Shift in Auto Industry. A couple of our staff, Angela Bloomer. Angela? She here? Yeah, Angela Bloomer. With the San Diego field office, and Michelle Oberg with our tech training unit are focal points of the article. Thank you both. Thank you, Jaime and Garrett, for the presentation. Appreciate it very much. Let's move on to our next agenda item. Wait, we're only on number 4. Legislation and Regulations Update. Brian Clark, our Executive Office. Good morning. Welcome, Brian. Before we begin, I just want to point out the Consumer Connection is in the foyer. You can get a copy of it if you want to read the article and the rest of the articles in that publication. Go ahead.
Morning. Advisory group members, Chief DeRay, my name is Brian Clark, and I will be providing the legislation and regulations update. Beginning with the legislation, I'll be providing a brief overview of pending bills in the legislature that may be of interest to the industry. On the regulatory side, we'll be providing a brief update on BAR's pending regulation packages. Shifting back to the legislation, in terms of the disclaimer at the bottom, it indicates that the slide, we made every attempt to make the information in here regarding the legislative activities the most current. However, legislative activities, it may not be. I do have updates to 3 bills that are not in the printed materials that I will provide as I go through them. The legislation presentation will involve, on the Assembly side, AB 2276, 2392, 2832, 2908, 3097, 3102, 3141, and on the Senate side, SB 210 and SB 1267. AB 2276. This involves or addresses motor vehicle insurance and auto body repair. It was introduced in February 13, 2018, referred to the Assembly Insurance Committee on March 1st, 2018. A hearing was scheduled on April 18th, 2018 before the Assembly Insurance Committee. On that date, it passed the committee and was re-referred to the Appropriations Committee. Summary of the bill. The bill as proposed requires insurers using or conducting labor rate surveys that establish labor rates in specific geographic areas to report audits to CDI every 12 months, replaces provisions established by CDA regulations requiring insurers conducting surveys to set a specified prevailing rate in a specific geographic area, requires auto body labor rate surveys to ask specific questions and meet minimum reporting standards, including auto body shop names, contact information, and number of shops surveyed, permits an auto body repair shop to negotiate a labor rate that differs from the prevailing auto body labor rate, and permits an insurer to adjust the labor rate in a written estimate provided by a claimant's chosen repair shop if certain criteria are met. AB 2392, towing and storage. Status introduced on February 14, 2018, and was referred to the Assembly Transportation Committee on March 5th, 2018. There is no hearing currently scheduled. Summary of the bill amends requirements that a facility may charge a vehicle owner a storage fee during the first 15 days of possession to the first 5 days and for any time during 3 days thereafter when the vehicle owner has been notified. Requires a facility to contact the insurer of a vehicle when unable to successfully notify a vehicle owner and the insurer is known. Establishes criteria to determine reasonable storage fees charged to an insurer responsible for storage and towing performed as a result of an accident or stolen recovery. Requires facilities to be open normal business hours and allows owners to inspect a stored vehicle for no less than 3 hours. Removes an exemption for notice to be posted by repair shops that charge for vehicle storage but do not provide towing services. AB 2832, lithium-ion battery recycling and reuse. The bill was initially introduced on February 16, 2018, and referred to the Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee on March 8, 2018. It passed the Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee on April 11th and was referred to the Assembly Appropriations Committee on that date. Appears that there was a hearing scheduled for April 10th, 2018. The bill requires Department of Toxic Substances Control to work with BAR, ARB, CAL-Recycle, California Energy Commission, and other stakeholders to identify approaches for the reuse or recycling of lithium-ion batteries from electric vehicles. DTSC must submit a report of those findings to the legislature by July 1, 2020. The bill would also require DTSC to establish a grant program to fund the development of recycling and reuse opportunities for lithium-ion batteries from electric vehicles when no longer suitable for their intended purposes, and would also require CAL-Recycle to develop a process to allow consumers to properly dispose of lithium-ion batteries from electric vehicles at no cost to the consumer. AB 2908, tire recycling. The bill was introduced on February 16, 2018, and referred to the Assembly Natural Resources Committee on March 8, 2018. Recently, on February 16, 2018, the bill was amended and passed the committee and was re-referred to the Appropriations Committee. There was a hearing that was scheduled for April 9, 2018. The bill would require CAL-Recycle to adopt regulations establishing the California tire regulatory fee based on specific criteria and not to exceed $1 per new tire sold. It would authorize CAL-Recycle to set different fees based on the number of tires wasted, nature of activity generating wasted tires, and other factors as appropriate. Would establish a goal of not less than 75% of solid waste tires generated be sourced, reduced, or recycled in the state by 2020. Would require a state tire generator that is a retail seller of new tires for consumer vehicles to pay a California tire regulatory fee and remit fees quarterly to the California Tire Recycling Management Fund, and would enact the Tire Recycling Initiative Program Act requiring CAL-Recycle to establish an incentive program for entities that purchase waste tires purchase waste tire products for incorporation in products for sale or use in local public works. Moving on to AB 3097. Previously, this was a child care bill and is now a smog check report bill. It was introduced on February 16, 2018 and referred to the Assembly Transportation Committee on February 22, 2018. It was amended on March 22, 2018 and re-referred to the Transportation Committee. There is no hearing scheduled, and the bill as now currently written will require the annual smog check performance report to include the number of vehicles that are unregistered and the number of vehicles that do not renew registration after filing a smog check. AB 3102. This is another amended bill. Previously, it dealt with heavy-duty motor vehicles, and now is a bill addressing lake or stream bed alteration agreements. It was introduced on February 16, 2018, and amended on March 22, 2018. No hearing scheduled, and as previously stated, the bill has been amended to address limits on fish and wildlife resource protections. AB 3141. This is the sunset review for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. It was introduced on February 16th, 2018 and referred to the Assembly Business and Professions Committee on March 12, 2018. The sunset review oversight hearing was held on March 5th, 2018. The bill amends Business and Professions Code Section 9882 to provide that the powers and duties of BAR be subject to review by the appropriate policy committees of the legislature as if the Automotive Repair Act were to be repealed on January 1st, 2023. Moving over to the other side of the State House, State Bill 210, Heavy Duty Vehicle Smog Check Program. This was introduced on February 1st, 2017, passed the Senate on May 31st, 2017, and referred to the Assembly. It was referred to the Assembly Committees on Education and Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials on June 12, 2017, was amended on August 23, 2017, and was referred to the Education Committee. It was then referred to the Assembly Rules Committee on August 28, 2017. Recently, on April 18th, 2018, it was re-referred to the Transportation Committee. No hearing is scheduled on this matter. The bill originally passed the Senate as a drinking water safety bill, and the amended bill authorized the Air Resources Board to develop and implement a heavy-duty vehicle inspection and maintenance program for non-gasoline heavy-duty on-road vehicles. The bill will permit the board to impose fees to recover its program implementation costs. SB 1267, Automotive Fuels and Products. It was introduced on February 16, 2018 and referred to the Senate Rules Committee on March 1st, 2018. No hearing is scheduled. This is a spot bill making technical non-substantive changes to Business and Professions Code Section 13404.5. Moving to pending bar regulations, I'll be discussing the electronic documents and consumer authorization package, bar 97 specifications package, ARD oil change requirements package, training provider requirement package, star cleanup package, and the roadside services exemption and revised estimate requirements package. Electronic documents and consumer authorization. Its purpose is twofold. One, to allow for electronic estimates and authorizations, transmission and storage of repair transaction documents, and two, to reorganize estimate, work order, invoice provisions. I'm sorry I said twofold, but it has three purposes. Second being reorganize estimate, work order, and invoice provisions to more closely align with automotive repair transactions, and three, clarify language as necessary. Its history: BAR held public workshops on July 9th, 2014, July 23rd, 2015, and October 21, 2015, and July 21st, 2016. There was a public hearing on September 26, 2017, And subsequently, there was a first 15-day public comment period that ended November 18th, 2018, a second 15-day public comment period that ended on December 19th, 2017, and a third 15-day public comment period that ended on January 25th, 2018. The rulemaking package was submitted to the DCA BCSH for final review on March 30th, 2018 by me. And the next step will be to finalize the rulemaking package and submit it to the Office of Administrative Law. Bar 97 specifications. The purpose is to modify Bar 97 equipment standards for smog check stations by 1, removing dedicated analog phone line requirement, 2, requiring LPFET to communicate directly with Bar 97, and 3, updating minimum computer hardware and software standards. Public workshop was conducted on October 20th, 2016. ET blasts were sent out on April 7th, 2017, January 10th, 2018, March 30th, 2018, and April 16th, 2018. There were also Winter 27 and Spring 2018 ARSC newsletters, and a public hearing was recently held on February 12th, 2018. Status is it was submitted to DCA BCSH for final review on February 23, 2018, and the next step will be to submit the final rulemaking to the Office of Administrative Law and approval file with the Secretary of State for immediate adoption. ARD oil change requirements. The purpose, require ARDs to adhere to maintenance schedule published by vehicle manufacturer, industry accepted and nationally distributed automotive services specification provider, or CAL-Recycle when making a recommendation to the customer for an oil change. And it would not prohibit customer from requesting an interval that differs from manufacturer's published maintenance schedule, and it would require ARDs when completing an oil change to include the following statement on the invoice. Quote, your vehicle's manufacturer publishes oil change intervals and the conditions and factors that influence those intervals in the owner's manual, end quote. The public workshops on this package were held on April 20th, 2017 and September 26, 2017. A notice filing was made with the Office of Administrative Law on February 27, 2018. Currently, we are preparing for the 45-day public comment period began on March 9, 2018, and we are preparing for the public hearing that will be held at bar headquarters on April 23, 2018. Training provider requirements. Purpose is to make requirements for certification of smog check training providers consistent with current licensing requirements, to authorize training for compliance with laws and regulations, and 3, make conforming changes to disciplinary guidelines. Public workshops were held on January 9, 2014 and October 21, 2015. It was the package was submitted for DCA formal review on December 1st, 2017, and currently we are in the process of reviewing the initial statement of reasons for resubmittal to DCA as part of the formal review process. The next step would be completing DCA BCSH formal review, and then we would file it with the Office of Administrative Law to begin the 45-day public comment period. STAR program cleanup. Purpose is to delete outdated Gold Shield program provisions, amend STAR eligibility criteria, and revise STAR suspension process to be consistent with statute. A public workshop on this package was held on July 21st, 2016. Currently, we are preparing the rulemaking package for submission to DCA BCSH by the end of this month for formal review. And the next step would be to file it with Office of Administrative Law to begin the 45-day public comment period. And the last one is the exempt services. Purpose would be to exempt roadside and other services from the definition of repair of motor vehicle. Public workshops on this package were held on April 22, 2015, July 20th, 2017, and February 12th, 2018. We are in the process of reviewing the workshop comments, and the next step would be to review and or revise the proposed regulations text.
Thank you, Sergi. Sergi is no longer here. Sorry, Brian. We've made it. Sergi left for take another job with another department, and we wish him well. Thank you, Brian, for the update. Any comments or questions? To this direction, we'll go with Lisa at the farthest end, and then Jack.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I have two questions. One related to the electronic.
Or Jack and Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were looking at me. Go ahead.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Brian. Do you have any idea of a timeline for the electronic documents and consumer authorization? I'm getting a lot of questions about that, so I'm hoping I can give an update to our members.
Well, it was submitted at the end of March, and what it does is it goes through a review process with the Department of Consumer Affairs and then with agency. We don't know what the exact timeline for that will be. Assuming it's a clean review, probably 4 months.
Okay, so late summer, maybe early fall?
Yes, and then what we would do would be we would then submit it to the Office of Administrative Review. The Office of Administrative Law. That would be the final rulemaking package. And once we get to that step, they have 30 business days to accept or reject. So once it gets to that stage, typically 45 business days till it would be approved. I don't know if we're going to request an immediate adoption on that, but it would be adopted pursuant to the Administrative Procedure Act. So it may go in sometime between October and January of 2019 as an effective date.
Oh, effective October 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry. October 2018
okay.
To the beginning of next year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, now I am looking at you. You can go. Yes, Jack.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Well, now I only have one question. Well, the electron. Well, let me go back to the electronics documentation. That's really an important regulation we've been working on for a long time. So you can make a request for a speedier effective date. Is that?
We can request from the Office of Administrative Law that it be effective upon filing with the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And that's usually done when it's approved the following day. It's at the discretion of the Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Law, and we have to have a cause showing. So we have to have a reason why we're requesting that.
Okay. Okay, it sounds like that's going to take effect later this year and maybe even early next year. Possibly.
Well, that's our hope, assuming that the timeline that I recently set out with Alicia.
The reason this one's important is that I think the industry has already gone to using text messaging for authorization and electronic signatures, and I'm getting a lot of calls on this one. They're like, okay, we're doing this now. Technically, it's not allowed, but everyone's, even the BAR enforcement personnel, have been acknowledging that, yeah, we know these regulations are going to pass, and so I think this is really an important one that needs to get done as soon as possible. The second question I had was with regard to the regulations dealing with the training provider requirements, and I know that one we've been working on that one. I think we've hit the 5-year mark, maybe over that. I think. And I know it's not your fault, Brian, because I know there have been a lot of your predecessors have been working on this, but I think we're to the point where I don't know what we need to do to kind of move this, in terms of a fast track. Because I know this one's not controversial at all. It's been reviewed at just to death. So I just want to put in a word that if this is something that can be moved quickly, I think I would recommend doing that one on the training provider requirements. We've waited way too long on that, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Jack. And we will talk to the department about possible expedited review of the electronic documents and consumer authorization package. We agree with you. It's a long time coming. Obviously, there was a lot of work that went into this with all of our work group meetings and the hearing and the public comment process. When you can see by the history there was a lot of work that went into that. Other comments?
If I may, just to follow up on what you had said about the expedited review with DCA, I had requested that when I submitted the package on March 30th, 2018. I would like to be able to make them expedited. I don't know if they will or not. That's up to them.
Mr. Pello.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I appreciate the efforts to expedite this, and it's been over 4 years, so anything that we can do to expedite it would be great. It's been moving slower than glaciers. So with that, the other comment I have is I know we have a workshop on Monday on the ARD regulation for oil change requirements. And I think it's still one of the issues that I wanted to just comment on today is the importance of the discussions that we've had on having ARDs for all oil changers, and that currently we're working on a regulation that is going to define what an oil change is and all the requirements of an oil change, but we're still dealing with an unlevel playing field. So with that, I think I wanted to be on record today during the BAG meeting to address this issue, since I won't be able to attend Monday's meeting, but we will be sending our formal response. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, John. I just slight clarification. It's rather than a workshop, it's an actual hearing on the proposed regulation. So this is where we take in comments from the public on the proposal. Other comments? Yes, Christy.
On the exempt services proposal, we do have a question as to regards to what's going on with the rest of the proposal from July 2017. Is there any?
I can help. So we've had a couple of workshops on various iterations of the proposal. There was a July 20-something or July 2017 workshop, as well as one we held in February of this year. Kind of two different versions of that proposal. Taking in all of the comments right now on those two workshops, and we'll decide whether or not to move forward with what provisions from those packages, from those two proposals. Actually, they were very different, and they had some components that were the same, but one went much further than the other. So we'll take a look at all the comments we received, and then look to possibly file a regulation proposal with the Office of Administrative Law. And that's still up in the air, but I think we probably will move forward with something in the next couple of months. I will point out, I just didn't finish the thought there, but it was, comments were, it was tough to get consensus on this, and largely to the point that I guess Mr. Gallo brought up, that's incumbent upon us as the Bureau to try and sort through all of that, and while we did our best with the workshop process to build that consensus, it was really tough to do so. So we'll look to see where we had consensus for the most part. There's obviously going to be a few outlying comments potentially that, but I think for the most part, we'll try to pare it down to where we thought we had consensus. Yes, anybody else? Elisa.
I just want to add that we would echo Mr. Gallo's comments about the oil change interval proposal. Also won't be able to be there on Monday, but we'll also be submitting a letter.
Thank you. All right, I'll go to the audience. Mr. Peters, Charlie Peters.
Yes, Mr. DeRay, I'm Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. I would like to make a point of order. That is, is it appropriate in this meeting for comments to be to the chairman of the committee, or is it appropriate that the comments go to the presenter? And impression that in an appropriately ran meeting, things go to the chair, and it's for the chair to decide what's appropriate for questioning of the person, because the chair is in charge. So I just have a question about a point of order. Should issues be addressed with the chair rather than with?
Guess that begs the question, who's the chair? I guess I'll have to defer to legal counsel on that, and I'm not sure, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that. We can certainly address that at a future meeting, but trying to just get the response to a question, but I'll try to have the presenter respond wherever appropriate, but obviously I'll take the liberty of interjecting a comment where I feel like the presenter may be at a loss for an explanation or need help with the response.
I'm comfortable saying on the record that this is the way that Pat is handling it is fine. That whoever has the answer to the question, who's on the dais, or even if it's the presenter or if it's the chair, whoever has the information to provide the answer, it's fine for them to respond.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm so glad you're here. Gene Lopez.
Thank you. I am Gene Lopez with Seidner's Collision Center, and I just have a couple of comments. First, Brian, thank you for your presentation. I concur with Jack Molandana and others regarding the electronic documents and consumer authorization. We need to really move forward on that. As Jack said, as a repairer, we're currently corresponding with our customers via email, via text messaging, and third-party resources. And so we certainly don't want to get in trouble by doing that if it's not yet authorized. So if we could move forward on that, that would be great. And secondly, I think I'm going to have to refer to Jack Molandanoff on this, but AB 2276, the Motor Vehicle Insurance and Auto Body Repair comments, on the first bullet point, it says that it requires insurers using or conducting labor rate surveys that establish labor rates in specific geographic areas to report the results to the CDI every 12 months. The issue that we currently have, and Jack, if you could expand on this, is the geographic area. It was, or it currently is, inducted by the CDI to smaller geographic areas, and now Jack, if you could expand on that for me, how far or how wide are these geographic areas moving with AB 2276?
Yeah, Jack Molandana for California Auto Body Association. Gene, so you are correct. This bill, AB 2276, is a very controversial bill. Just for the record, the Auto Body Association and the shops in the state are opposed to this, and some consumer groups and so forth. The insurance companies are the ones pushing this. Your question had to do with the geographical area, and right now the way the bill reads, the geographical area could be as large as an assembly district, which is quite large compared to what the regulations require, which is quite smaller and within a local market. So it's within the 6 closest shops. So that's the big difference. The bill opens this geographical area to an assembly district, which could include obviously different markets, different cities, different counties, which you have different rents. So maybe one particular shop is in a high rent district, they have to pay higher rent or maybe higher minimum wage because of the particular city compared to another area within the geographical area where the shops pay less. So, and then the insurance companies figure out an average, which is not fair because you got some shops who have to pay more rent, they get paid less from the insurance company, or vice versa, where the shops that pay less rent and can afford a cheap, because of a cheaper labor rate, ends up getting a windfall. So yes, the geographical area here, it's not detailed in the summary, but yes, it's quite large in the bill right now, and actually is one of the major issues and stumbling blocks of the opposition of the Auto Body Association. So hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, that is, and that's what I wanted to hear, and Jack could define that much better than I could. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Others? All right, Brian. Thank you very much. All right, our standing update on the California Vehicle Inspection System Transition Project, or otherwise known as CAL-VISTA. Clay Lee, Deputy Chief for Smog Check Operations, and Eric Schwartz with our bid contractor, SGS Testcom. Welcome, both of you. Eric.
Thank you very much. I guess first, before I dive in, I just want to congratulate Jaime and the enforcement team on the operation that was performed. It's just been great working with their team, and I can't say anything more than Jaime did, but just really pleased with the outcome of that, and wanted to congratulate Jaime specifically and recognize his leadership with that operation. So thank you, Jaime. All right, CAL-VISTA. Real quickly, I'll just summarize a high-level scope of the project, just to remind everybody. First and foremost was to negotiate ownership of the system. Secondly, to refresh the system to a state-owned data center. And concurrently with that activity, publish an RFP to obtain ongoing maintenance and operation services. So in terms of the RFP status, we did receive final bids on February 12th of 2018, and we have initiated reviews of those bids. In terms of project dependencies, Brian briefly touched on this particular regulation package. I will continue to report on it as well, given its importance in relationship to the CAL-VISTA project. We do continue to have quality of service issues out there with dial-up phone lines and stations that are unable to connect because of issues with those phone lines. Brian gave a much more detailed status, but this is at DCA and BCSH for final review. And at this point, we still are on track for a 7/1/18 adoption. So we're looking pretty good. In terms of the certification of the internet-ready Bar 97 equipment, 2 vendors have been certified for statewide deployment. Worldwide Environmental Products and Opus are both approved for statewide use. That information is available on our website. And we've actually seen quite a few stations just in the last month start purchasing this equipment and deploying this equipment. So that's very encouraging that folks aren't waiting for this regulation package to be finalized before moving forward with this internet-based equipment. This slide's actually a little bit dated. We're getting numbers weekly, but just kind of shows a summary of the analyzers that are out there still on dial-up and the analyzers that have been moved over to IP. We're up to about 850 stations using internet capable Bar 97 equipment at this point. So that's encouraging. In terms of the timeline, the dates we've been reporting against, I will kind of skip down to the first item in red, which is transition the system to OTEC. The target date for this was June. We anticipate that date being missed. Eric will kind of speak to some of the details and some of the activities that are going on to help minimize that delay. The other activity, the second activity in red, is the award of the RFP, which was scheduled for June of 2018 as well. At this point, we do anticipate that date slipping. I can say at this point, I would anticipate that date slipping at least a month or two, and potentially longer. Be able to provide kind of more information on that at the next bag. I briefly mentioned Bar 97 dial-up support. We've received a lot of questions from stations wanting to know when that we will require Bar 97 machines to communicate over the internet and when we will terminate dial-up support. We have not announced a drop-dead date for that yet. but it will obviously be after the regulations are adopted, which we anticipate being 7/1. So at some point after that, there will be a hard date at which point dial-up communication will no longer be accepted. Finally, the contract transition is the last date we have in red. This date is additionally at risk at this point, given the delay to the delivery of the UAT and production environments. And we will update this committee, this group on that date as we work through some additional issues as well. That's all I have. I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and then we can field some questions after his presentation.
Thank you very much. All right, good morning. From a CAL-VISTA status project perspective, we've had several accomplishments since the last BAG meeting. Active Directory, which is our authentication system, has been completed, and actually, as I am speaking right now, is being rolled out to the production environment for beta users. That's happening today, and we expect that to get validated over the next 2 weeks before it's rolled out to all users after that. The production Exadatas, which is the database storage units that are going into OTEC there, have been configured and certified by Oracle. This is both the UAT and production units. The Alien Vault, which is used for vulnerability scanning, has been completed for the new environments as well, and it is also being fine-tuned to better catch any type of vulnerability in the new environments. Additionally, the UAT environment has been set up, and it is currently undergoing testing at this point, so it is fully set up and operational, at least for a test perspective. And we also completed failover testing of the Exadata node. So within each Exadata unit, there are multiple components to it, and we're able to fail over from one to the other. So we have validated that all works as designed. And also we have set up all the production databases within CDTRC as well, otherwise known as OTEC. From currently in progress, as I mentioned, we have Active Directory rolling out today. The date on there was the 12th, but that was pushed out due to some production issues we experienced over the past 2 weeks. And as a measure of safety and to reduce risk, we delayed that rollout until today. And then, as I mentioned, on May 7th, we'll be rolling it out to all production users. The UAT environment is undergoing regression testing at this point. That started last week and is expected to continue for the next 4 weeks from an SGS perspective, and then it'll be handed off to BAR to begin their testing after that. In addition, all of the applications are being installed and configured within the production environment, and we expect that to be completed within the month as well, so that testing can get underway there. From a next steps perspective, we will begin building out the disaster recovery site. We'll begin cutting over the UAT environment and testing the cutover for that and how it will occur in production. We'll be testing the production environments and then actually conducting the cutover for production and doing a disaster recovery test. From a timeline perspective, as Clay mentioned, we are somewhat behind on the timeline. The 6/1 date will be missed at this point, and we also expect the DR dates to be missed as well. The current target that we're looking at for the production delivery is going to be closer to the end of the year. We do not have an exact timeline at this point of when it'll be delivered, mainly because the teams both between SGS and BAR are looking to see where we can still save time, where we can gain efficiencies through our testing endeavors, and where we can run things simultaneously. So all of the teams are working very hard to identify ways that we can cut time off the schedule and try to pull it back. In terms of pulling it back for June, that will not be possible, but pulling it back from an end of the year perspective is possible at this point. And I think we'll have a very good, solid timeline and dates to deliver by the next BAG meeting. The dates that are listed on the presentation you see there have been updated. The ones specifically for October have been pushed out to December at this point, but again, those we'll be looking at bringing those in from the December timeframe, close to possibly to November and such. We did have a very good working session with the BAR team yesterday, the project team, to look at how we could test in different ways to be able to gain time in there. Currently, just to give everyone an idea here, there is over 100 days of testing of these environments in the schedule currently. And that includes at least half dozen resources or more doing that testing during that time frame. So we're looking at what we can do there to be able to save some time and gain efficiencies. We're also looking at being able to, for instance, the disaster recovery environment. We are pre-building a lot of the equipment here before it is shipped to the disaster recovery site and set up. That's going to gain us some efficiencies and time there, and we're able to work out any bugs and issues long before the equipment gets to the remote site. So that there, again, is going to be a time savings for us. But I think over the next month or so, we should be able to really identify other savings that we can gain and then be able to pull the schedule in from there. And that's pretty much what I had for the updates for this month. Thank you.
Thank you both. Questions, comments? Nikki Ayers.
Maybe you're not the right people to ask, but with all the data and everything that everybody's doing in this program, isn't there a way to put on these machines to tell the technician if he's smogging the machine on the wrong platform? A warning or something?
I guess kind of an unrelated question to this presentation, but I'm certainly happy to answer it. It's certainly a question we've gotten before. It is not an easy change to make. It sounds simple, but it's not. It would create quite a bit of effort. The future, when Bar 97 machines are connected over the internet, it becomes a little bit more feasible, but because that equipment's not connected real time, that's actually a very complicated change to make. So I know it sounds like a really simple change, but it's not.
Thank you. Others? Jack?
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the transition system to OTEC. So, and I know you had the deadline, it was originally for June. So as I understand that, that's been in the works for, I don't know, several years now. I mean, so the state, as I understand it, SGS is going to transfer what they have to the state, the OTEC Center. That's kind of the project, right? And so that's been going on for a while. I know you've mentioned a lot of acronyms there, and I'm not a tech or anything, but why the delay? I guess, you know, in terms of, if you can explain it to me like a sixth grader, why is this the delay? Because I know last time you talked about, you thought maybe a few weeks. Now we're talking, I don't know, I just heard a couple months, so I'm not clear why the delay.
There's not a single reason for the delay, but rather I think it's a series of causes for the delay. One, I think, big reason is that the scope of work for actually moving it and getting it set up was much greater than originally thought. There's a lot more work in getting it moved, getting the equipment refreshed, and getting it up and running. So that, I don't believe, was fully understood at the time the initial deadlines were set. I think a second one also is that due to additional security requirements being required, there's SAM 5300 and NIST requirements that are being required to be in place now. That has caused a cascading effect throughout the entire project of additional work that's been required. And that has all taken up additional time. And there's also, I believe, the architecture wasn't really fully designed out at the very beginning to the detailed level that it probably should have, to really fully understand what the scope of work was going to be and how much time and effort was going to be required to get the project done. And as we've gone through it over the past year that I've been involved in it, it has a lot has come out of that, and all those have combined together to cause the delays and the push out of the overall project.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Charlie Peters.
Yes, Mr. Pat DeRay and committee, I'm Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals representing motorists. I find the answer to why can't we give notice to the technician about this being tested on the wrong platform just fascinating. The person who set up the Bar 97, now retired, indicated to me that's a very simple fix. Set it up on the Bar 97 to start with and indicated that it should have been put in the new machine when it was incorporated, and it was very simple to incorporate it in the new machine. But what's being said here, for some reason, doesn't seem to match very well. And it seems to me that the amount of time and effort in prosecuting and dealing with all of these citations and so on and so forth takes some time, and providing a little respectful information to the technician doing the job who may be just making a mistake, when it can be resolved by probably one of the greatest people at the Bureau of Automotive Repair in its history, who's retired sitting at home doing nothing, probably provide some advice as to how to get that done almost immediately. So I'm confused by the answers that I'm hearing. Do not seem to be very consistent, and there just has to be some way to improve the outcome of what we're doing and where we're going. Thank you.
So real quick, just to clarify as well, if a technician performs a test on an OIS on a vehicle without OBD2, we do prompt them and ask them, hey, are you sure this is the right testing platform? So I think really the question you're asking is, why don't we notify technicians that are testing 2000 or newer on a bar 97 is really what this issue comes down to, because we do prompt the alternate scenario. But I just want to make that clarification. The change to the bar 97 is the more difficult change. That feature is available within the OIS, which is almost 70% of our test volume at this point. So,
Thank you, Clem. Other comments, questions? Well, we look forward to the update in July. Get a little more precise on the timeline. All right, our next presentation is on the CAP Vehicle Retirement Survey Report, a study that was done by our Consumer Assistance Program, Gil DeLuna, with CAP. Go ahead and introduce yourself too.
Good morning, or good afternoon. My name is Andrea Hightower. I'm an analyst with CAP.
Morning, I'm Gil DeLuna with the Program Manager for the Consumer Assistance Program. Good to be here today and address the group. And the Consumer Assistance Program is charged with administering the Vehicle Retirement and Repair Assistance Program, as well as the Bar Industry Help Desk. But today we're going to focus primarily on the Vehicle Retirement Program. For those consumers who meet income eligibility requirements, they may receive $1,500 to retire their vehicle. In order for them to be income eligible, their household income must be less than or equal to 225% of the federal poverty guidelines. If a consumer is unable to meet this criteria, they may be eligible to retire their vehicle for $1,000 under option 1 of our program, as long as they fail their most recent Smog check. Under option 2, if a consumer passes or fails their most recent Smog check, they can receive $1,500 through the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program, otherwise known as EFMP, as long as they meet the income eligibility criteria. Each year, CAP has to report activity to the legislature along with the amount of emissions reduction. As you can see in the table, for the last 3 fiscal years, CAP received an average of 118,017 vehicle retirement applications. We retired an average of 49,271 vehicles and averaged about 6,854.5 tons in emission reductions for the entire program. In October, CAP decided to conduct a survey at the dismantler sites to consumers that were already approved for the vehicle retirement. The survey was aimed primarily to find out what consumers plan to do with their incentives, if anything, and also to find out how our program is perceived by the public. The method we used for the survey wasn't the most scientific or effective, but it was the most cost-effective to conduct. When the consumer showed up with their approval letter at the dismantler sites, they were given the survey to complete while waiting to be processed. After the survey was completed, the dismantler retained the surveys, and our CAP inspectors collected them, sent them to our office, and to input to our database. CAP recorded almost 21,000 responses between October 5 2017 through February 28th, 2018. Of the recorded surveys, 12.9% declined, 24.3% were completed in Spanish. Right now, I'll introduce our lead analyst for this project, and that's Andrea Hightower.
As you'll see by this table, the data collected from the survey indicated that within the CAL-VR program, 26.8% of approved consumers were determined to be income eligible and received the $1,500 incentive amount. The average incentive across the entire CAL-VR program was $1,134. Within the EFMP program, 100% of approved consumers were determined to be income eligible and received the full $1,500 incentive amount. As you see with the next table, within the CAL-VR program, the average consumer retired a 1998 vehicle model year and replaced it with a 2014 vehicle model year. Within the EFMP program, the average consumer retired a 1997 vehicle model year and replaced it with a 2008 vehicle model year. In the next data set, you can see that based on the fuel type data provided by the survey participants, we were able to determine that the overwhelming number of replacement vehicles are powered by internal combustion engines. Survey question 1 asked the consumers, how did you learn about the state's vehicle retirement program? They were given the options of friend or relative, smog inspection report, smog check station, internet, BAR's 800 number, radio, TV, newspaper, or other. We received just over 20,000 responses, with friend or relative scoring the highest at 42%. Other responses scored at 6% and included answers such as, I Googled it on my phone, I heard it from a Lyft driver, and I've done this before, I know the process. Survey question number 2 asked the consumers, if you had not sold this vehicle to the state's vehicle retirement program, what would you have done with the vehicle? They were offered the options of sold the vehicle, junked the vehicle, donated the vehicle, fixed the vehicle, registered the vehicle as inoperable, driven the vehicle unregistered, or other. Close to 20,000 total responses, with sold the vehicle scoring the highest at 39%. Other responses came in at 3%, with average responses being, I would have made it an art piece. 2 of our consumers said they would have cried. And 1 respondent said, I have no idea because I have no funds to fix it and no one wanted to buy it. Survey question number 3 asked our consumers if the CAP application was understandable and easy to complete. They were offered the choices of strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. 17,873 total responses, with strongly agree scoring the highest at 61%, with a total agree rating of just over 90%. Survey question number 4 asked the consumer if they were notified in a reasonable amount of time of their eligibility. 17,780 total responses, with strongly agree scoring the highest at 55%, with well over 90% agree. Survey question number 5 asked the consumer if after the vehicle is retired with the state's vehicle retirement program, what will the primary driver of the vehicle do for transportation? The options given were purchase a used vehicle, drive another vehicle in the household, purchase a new vehicle, ride public transportation, will no longer drive a vehicle, use a bicycle, or other. We received 18,800 total responses, with purchase a used vehicle scoring highest at 32%. Other responses scored at 3% and included answers such as, I'm joining the Navy, I'll be purchasing a golf cart, or I'm going jogging. Survey question number 6 asked consumers, if you have purchased or plan on purchasing another vehicle, what is the year, make, and model? We received 9,206 total responses, indicating the model year, with 2017 scoring the highest at 13.32%. This chart indicates all model years responded from 1950 to 2019, with model year 2017 scoring the highest with 1,226 responses. Additionally, question number 6 received 8,249 total responses that indicated the vehicle model. We then converted those models into vehicle body types, took the top 10, which included 3,393 responses, and determined that midsize sedan scored the highest with 46.27%. Examples of midsize sedan would be the Accord, the Altima, or the Camry. We then had compact sedans at 36.40%, which included examples such as Civic, Corolla, and Sentra. Next is hybrid at 5.9%, which includes examples such as C-Max, Insight, and Prius. Next on the list is small pickup at 4.13%, with examples such as Frontier, Ranger, and Tacoma. We also had minivan at 4.13%, with examples such as Odyssey, Sienna, Town and Country, and rounded out the list with crossover SUV at 3.09%, with examples being CR-V, RAV4, and Sorento. Survey question number 7 asked the consumer how many vehicles are maintained by your household, not including the vehicle being retired. Consumers were given the option of 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, 5 or more cars, or 0 cars. 16,053 total responses, with 1 car scoring the highest at 43%. Survey question number 8 asked the consumer, overall, how satisfied were you with the process of retiring your vehicle? 16,455 total responses, with strongly satisfied scoring highest at 61%. Once again, well over 90% total agree. Survey question number 9 asked, do you have any additional comments regarding your experience with the vehicle retirement program? Of the 3,568 total responses, I will share 4. The first consumer stated, because this program ran out of funding, I had to wait 5 months to retire the vehicle. You need more funding. Consumer number 2 said, please keep this program. It should be expanded and improved. Consumer number 3, the only bump in the road I ran into was the program was initially out of funds. The first time I tried to send in an application, I had to wait another 4 months to try again. No big deal. I'm still very pleased with the option of even being able to do this. Consumer number 4 gave my absolute favorite comment. Bear with me. I cannot share how critical this program is for me. I am 64 years old, disabled on Social Security, with a 22-year-old son in college. I retired a vehicle several years ago, which allowed me to purchase this Honda Civic. It was a miracle. I am on a fixed income and would not have had a lump sum of money for transportation. Again today, I will be able to have a decent down payment so my son can purchase a reliable vehicle. This program has been life-saving for me, and I am so very grateful.
Too bad we couldn't read all the comments. Some were very, very entertaining. But in conclusion, we had a few takeaways. Most consumers surveyed purchased another gas-operated vehicle, but they at least upgraded the year of their vehicle around 10 years. The incentive CAP provides might not be enough to purchase a hybrid or electric, but there are programs. The Air Resources Board has in the South Coast Air Basin and also San Joaquin a retire and replace program that offers more incentives for low-income consumers to purchase vehicles. Other takeaway is the program is needed by consumers to upgrade to cleaner vehicles and helps the high-polluting vehicles get off the road. CAP needs more funding to keep the program running throughout the fiscal year. We typically run out of funds by mid or late April. It also confirms that CAP does an excellent job. Our CAP staff is great, dedicated, experienced people that really have the consumers and clean air and our mission with the best interests at heart. ARB has expressed interest in including this report in their regulations to expand their EFMP program. And we are currently assisting. We have several air districts calling us up, asking to emulate our program, our Retire program. We continue to assist them with their district programs as well. So it's a good program. It's solid and always evolving. So happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Gil and Andrew. Really appreciate the fact that you did a survey and undertook one and give some very good information back to us on how the program's working. I just had a question. I looked through this presentation a couple of times before we actually went to print, and I'm surprised I didn't catch this to ask it before we did. Slide 8, Table 2, talks about the range of retired vehicle model year, and there's a vehicle model years for both VR and EFMP that aren't subject to the Smog program, so I'm not really clear on that. Maybe just help enlighten everyone. It says 1970 and 1965 for EFMP. I'm not sure how that works. How do they get retired if they're not subject to Smog?
Talking about the vehicle characteristics?
Yeah, right there. Range of retired vehicle model year. Yeah. I mean, the first model year that's subject to Smog is 1976. So I just wondered if that was a typo. I didn't see it the first couple of times when I reviewed it earlier this week.
Yeah,
so
I missed it too. So
yeah.
It is a typo.
Oh, okay.
I would say the average replaced model year vehicle is actually 2010. That's what's on the report, if that's the one you're referring to.
No, it's the range of retired vehicle model years. It begins with 70 and 65. I don't even know how that's possible. Maybe.
Definitely something that I will look into.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't see it when I was reviewing it earlier this week a couple of times. So. Yeah, okay. Thanks. All right. Any other questions or comments? Megan?
Yes, thank you, Megan, Auto Club of Southern California. Somewhat related to Pat's question. I have a similar question about the battery electric vehicles, why that would be included in vehicles that could be retired under this program, if they aren't subject to smog checks.
What slide are you referring to?
Slide number 9.
Slide number 9 indicates the replacement vehicles.
Oh, those were the replacement, not what was retired. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, thank you.
Thank you, though, for asking. Make sure we clarify that point. Other questions or comments? Okay, I think I see someone behind you, Andrea. Yep, it's Charlie Peters.
Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. One of the questions that's come up previously, placement eligibility lists, and here one of them at least, was low emissions vehicles. And overall, I'm of the impression, because I drive one, that PZEVs should be incorporated in low emission warranties and actual pollution create. Love to see that reviewed and have those incorporated in possibilities for a low emission possibility as being eligible.
Thank you very much. Bud Rice.
Thank you, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. I know it's not part of the program, but I thought I would just voice it anyway, that vehicles that get retired all get crushed, is my understanding. It's just a shame that some of those parts can't get reused, because somebody needs a bumper, somebody needs a taillight, somebody needs a dashboard, and their vehicles going longer, access to those extra parts.
Thank you, Bud. I do believe that that there's a process for the dismantler to outbid the state for vehicles that might have some value in that regard. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, they do. The dismantlers do have an opportunity to purchase it for more money.
Okay, thank you. Alisa.
Thank you. To somewhat echo Bud's comments, I understand that the vehicles go to a dismantler. Would it be at all possible to perhaps pursue donating some of these vehicles to auto tech programs? Because a lot of auto tech programs have a lot of trouble getting access to cars for these kids to work on. Is that something that you guys have looked into or would perhaps be open to at some point?
Well, it sort of defeats the purpose. The reason why we crush the vehicle is to get the vehicle off the road because they're typically high polluting. That's to donate to somebody else that will drive the same car.
Well, I mean for auto tech programs for kids to work on the cars, they wouldn't be driving around on public roads or anything like that. They'd be just in shops.
I like the idea. We'll take a look at it. Yeah. John Gallo.
Just to follow up on Elisa's point, because a lot of the schools now are able to take those vehicles and cut them and use the front clip with all the components, and that would take them off the highway and still be usable for training purposes. So just something to consider, because some of the schools are, really restricted on space, and so they can't keep a full vehicle, but by downsizing the vehicle, it takes it off the road, but it still allows them to use it for training. Just something to consider and add to her comment.
Yeah, it's mindful of something we do also in our engineering lab. We have half cars. They're actually not called cars. They're called inspection platforms. So they're not being used. We avoid DGS vehicle procurement requirements because they are truly not vehicles. Go ahead, George Woods.
Yeah, George Woods, California Automotive Teachers. It's very much needed. As an example, one of the classes that I taught was manual transmissions, and the students had to remove and replace a manual transmission, start the car up, drive it a couple of feet, make sure it works. Well, when you do that on a car 30, 40 times, it's worn out. And so having another car that could replace it, really would add to the programs. So if there's a way to work it out, I know it's a complicated deal, but there is a huge need in the schools for that.
We'll take a look at this. We'll get our folks with the Consumer Assistance Program together with, I saw Ed here. Ed? Yeah. Representing the schools and instructors for certification unit, the Standards and Training Unit. I couldn't think of the name. Thanks. Standards and Training will get together with CAP and look at the feasibility of doing something along these lines. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Keith.
I would like to add that I work with auto body repair programs virtually every week, and all of them are in need of vehicles in their facilities for auto body repair. Often they're chasing the opportunity to find a vehicle to work on. So any chance we have to provide them with vehicles for the auto body repair programs is greatly needed. Every school I deal with in California can use some good vehicles for the students to work on. So I would echo Lisa, absolutely.
It's unanimous. All right, thank you very much. Great feedback. Thank you for the presentation. Great report. I appreciate the study that you guys did. All right, next presentation. Mr. Coburn, Greg Coburn. There he is. Greg Coburn with BAR's Engineering Research Branch, here to give us a presentation on engine change guidelines. Also, Richard, am I pronouncing this right? Carranza with the California Resources Board. Thank you and welcome.
Pat and the advisory group for letting us come speak to you today on this old topic that we're trying to slightly update on engine changes. So we've been working with CARB on trying to update some of the guidelines that we currently have in place for engine changes and how we will deal with them when they go to the referee sites, and let the builders of these vehicles know what the rules are that will be applied to them when they show up. So we've been working hard between Ed Van Mills Group from Standards and Training, the engineering branch, and ARB, CARB.
My name is Richard Carranza. I work, I'm a staff engineer in the aftermarket parts section of the Air Resources Board down at Del Monte.
I think that mic is actually working better. Try them out, both of them.
That better?
I can't tell. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Try the other one. I don't know. Try them together.
At the same time. There we go.
Yeah.
Double up. All right, Richard, I'm going to let you handle the first couple of slides here.
Sure. Yeah, the objective was for the California Air Resources Board and the Bureau of Automotive Repair to jointly update the current smog engine change guidelines located both on the CARB website, the BAR website, and on the Smog Check reference guide. The focus on maintaining air quality while also providing a reasonable pathway for the presence of engine changes, and also provides information on all the criteria to fulfill the Smog Check requirements. And this was kind of key because the current regulation, the current guidelines are a little vague in some areas, so there was, I think, a lot of interpretation being taken. So with these updates, we became more specific as to what's required for the donor vehicle as well as recipient vehicle. The laws and regulations that we had to deal with are primarily with the California Vehicle Code 27156, which is the anti-tampering code, that no person shall disconnect, modify, or alter any required motor vehicle pollution control device. And also Title 16, Section 3362-1.1 of the California Code of Regulations, an automotive repair dealer shall not make any motor vehicle change that degrades the effectiveness of the vehicle's emission control system that it was certified with. Nor shall said dealer, in the process of rebuilding the original engine or while installing a replacement engine, effect changes that would degrade the effectiveness of the original emission control system and or components thereof. Engine changes, if done correctly, can cause problems for vehicle owners, inspectors, and repair technicians. We recommend really to stay with the same original engine, transmission, and emission control configuration for the owner vehicle, and or use a CARB exempted engine package. The guidelines are for performing engine changes and are not exemption procedures. After receiving an initial referee inspection and BAR referee label, the vehicle will remain subject to all the same vehicle requirements as the recipient vehicle had for future smog check inspections. The guidelines have been sorted into the following categories, some of which overlap in the requirements. The four categories are the Type 1, a non-OBD2 certified vehicle receiving an OBD2 certified engine. Type 2 would be a vehicles originally equipped with OBD2 emission control systems. Type 3 would be electric vehicle conversions. And Type 4 would be all model year vehicles, gasoline, diesel, hybrid, CNG, LNG, LPG, and everything else, except electric vehicle conversions. So within each of these four different categories, we have a set of requirements that they need to comply by in order to not degrade the effectiveness of the emission control system of the recipient vehicle.
All right, I'm going to cover a few of these slides that are a little bit more specific on what it is that we're changing and what those guidelines would look like. Many of these are the same guidelines that have been around for a while in BAR Smog Check Reference Guide, but we're updating it due to the newer technology. Those guidelines have been around for quite a while. The example here, we decided we'd put in here to kind of get people's minds thinking about what we're talking about. This is a 86 Ford Mustang, originally had the 5.0 liter engine with a Chevrolet LS motor dropped in the thing. So this is kind of our first category of kind of these non-OBD vehicles, these 95 and older recipient vehicles receiving a new technology OBD2 engine, so a 96 and newer engine. So they're putting a cleaner, newer, more modern engine into an older. So this is one of the areas that we tried to be a little more lenient than necessarily what we've done in the past. We've gotten some feedback from industry, from vehicle owners, asking, gosh, it's going to be a lot cleaner if I can do this, but it's really difficult to do with the rules that are current. So we went through, so I'll read through some of these bullets just to give you guys a flavor for what we're looking for in the guidelines and what we'd like your feedback on. This is kind of our proposal here. The donor engine must be in a stock certified condition and support all the certified OBD2 functionality, meaning that engine should operate like it was designed for that Chevy in the case of this Mustang. Modifications of the intake and exhaust systems are permissible only if necessary to accommodate the packaging of the vehicle and only if they do not affect the functionality of the system. So it's one of the things that kind of has been asked for people that do this for a living. Gosh, I just can't quite fit it inside the frame rails if I leave it exactly like it is. So we're allowed to kind of move things around a little bit to make it fit in the vehicle and kind of make these guidelines make sense. The transmission and evaporator systems will be allowed to remain in the recipient vehicle, must function appropriately. So these are things like if they need to keep the gas tank because it's a truck and they're putting some other type of engine in there, we're not making them take everything out, which is one of the rules from the past. So as long as they can make everything function and work, we want to give them that flexibility. We just want to make sure it's not overly emitting emissions. And then we're going to go through at the end. There's kind of this all model year section in the last type, so we'll go over that, but that will also apply to all of these vehicles. The next example, the next category here is vehicles that were originally equipped with OBD2 and they're getting another OBD2 engine. So this is 96 and newer vehicles receiving a 96 or newer engine. The example here is a real world example that was at the referee, and we dealt with some pretty interesting and unique companies having some innovative ideas. They are dropping LS motors in 2008 Jeep Wranglers. They're also dropping in there and different things. So they're really interested in what are BAR's rules and how does all of this work. It gets a little bit more complicated when you're going from a really clean vehicle to start with, trying to still put a reasonably clean engine in there. They're a little bit more stringent than what we were talking about before. You're having an older vehicle and you're significantly upgrading the emissions system. So this is requiring all emission system configurations must be in the original emission control system configuration as the donor vehicle, including but not limited to the transmission, evaporator system, exhaust, and intake. All the requirements listed as well in the general area. All right, Richard, I'm going to let you cover this.
Sure. The type 3 would be the electrical vehicle conversion. Vehicles converted to 100% electric drive with power supplied exclusively by the onboard batteries are considered in compliance with the engine change requirements, provided that all fuel system components are removed prior to inspection, including the fuel tank and evaporative system, that no fuel-fired heater is installed on the vehicle. None of the requirements listed for all model year vehicles, type 4, apply to the electric vehicle conversion. And the example that we have here is an example of the Mazda Miata with a battery electric conversion. When ARB gets a request from consumer or even a converter asking about electric vehicle conversions, they do not need an exemption from 27156. All they need to do is visit the bar referee to get the label and have the bar referee inspect the vehicle. Pretty easy process for them to do that. So, but to make it fit in the vehicle, that's another story by itself.
All right, so this is kind of the general class that applies to everything except the electric vehicle conversions. So this is an example of a Porsche where they dropped a V8 engine in there, an American V8 engine. It's kind of interesting. Apparently we do get a few of these that come through the referee, the guys tell me. So it's a little bit crazy with the setup of that. So we kind of laid out some general categories with some requirements on here. So walk through them here. Got the model year of the vehicle has to be, engine being put in there has to be the same or newer. So you can't put an older engine into a newer vehicle. Again, same level it was originally certified to. Vehicle and engine classifications. So you can't downgrade the classification. It needs to go in the same classification. So if it's a heavy-duty motor, you aren't going to be dropping that into a passenger car. Again, very different emissions classifications. Certification type, so that's whether it's California or federal certification. Again, it just needs to be the same or more stringent. So if you have a federal vehicle and you want to put a California engine there, that's fine. If it's a California vehicle, you can't drop a federal motor in if it doesn't meet that same classification. Smog check test. So once you show up to the referee, one of the things we're trying to spell out is so the guys know when they're coming in exactly what they're going to be tested on. So it'll be a bar 97 tailpipe test regardless of the model year, as well as an OIS test. And all the readiness monitors will need to be set on the vehicle to show that it's been able to run to completion. And the normal standards will apply to the vehicle that you get during readiness monitors. The idea here is that, a lot of these end up getting sold to a consumer that may not know as much about the vehicle or what's going on with it. So the idea is we want to make sure that it's running well at the beginning. Most of these are just completed, so we want to make sure that we held the line right there at the front. It's a little different than what we do with most vehicles. The exhaust system or the after treatment devices, basically they've all got to be there and functioning. We have a lot of stuff we're trying to spell out with the diesel after treatment systems. If dropping a diesel in there or upgrading their diesel engine, a lot of that takes place. So you have a lot of complicated stuff in that exhaust that needs to function correctly. Exhaust sensors, again, they've all got to be there. We spelled out, we're spelling out some specifications as to how far the distances can be off. We want to give the builder some leeway, but we want to keep it within a certain range. So right now we're kind of trying to measure off of what it is. So we're trying to give them some leeway so they can move that CAT around a little bit and they can move that O2 sensor around a little bit within reason. The OBD2 system, so we're putting in some requirements. So if it's getting an OBD2 engine in the thing, we're going to be looking at things such as the CAL-ID, the CVN, that the diagnostic link connector, the OBD connector where you talk to the vehicle, all those things are in the right place. They're functioning. So again, when the ultimate consumer gets this thing, it can go into a normal smog check station, they can do a normal smog check, and they know what's going on. You aren't constantly going back to the referee with these same vehicles. And just making sure that the right engine is put in there with the right software running. Aftermarket parts, the same EO requirements apply to an engine change. It's got to have an EO for that engine being put in. On there, so the same rules apply in smog check. And lastly, emission systems. Basically, we're trying to spell out that it's all got to be working. You can't come in and the evaporative system is totally not. Got to be there and be functioning properly. That was it. So we will be putting out some draft guidelines at some point, but we really wanted to get the advisory committees and others' comments as we kind of march forward on this before we release those draft guidelines. So that's really where we're at.
Thank you, Greg. And Richard, any comments or questions from the advisory group? Yes, Dave Kusa.
Thank you, Dave Kusa, to Automotive Service Councils of California. So on the Type 1, the first bullet point, so things, pass lock, PATs, things like that, since they're not OB2 functionality items, aren't a problem. So theft deterrent systems?
Yeah, so a theft deterrent system, so as we do in general smog check, if it's got theft deterrent on there, we do not, that will not fail smog. And it'll be the same case here. So if it's got a device that's turning off the ignition or something like that into the wiring harness, those things shouldn't fail smog. Sometimes they're getting tougher and tougher to distinguish between, whether that's modifying the computer system or not. But it bars aftermarket parts guidance document that we do in coordination with CARB. It specifically calls out those devices.
Okay, yeah, because you're in this example with the '86 Mustang, right? It's got one version of, and maybe not of Pat's Ford's version. The LS motor is totally different with GM's pass lock system. They aren't going to talk to each other. So this car would, if it's active, it's never going to start. So as long as that's cool, that's fine. Modifications in the second bullet point, things like cold air packages. I mean, in this example again, right, the intake induction system is going to be dramatically different than the 86 Ford. The LS system is probably not going to fit. So would it have to be a cold air package or induction package that has an EO for the LS motor?
Yeah, and that's what we see most of the time at the referee is that most of them have a cold air intake, an aftermarket cold air intake on it that has an EO, and that's what we would expect. And basically the leeway we're trying to give in there is that sometimes they just can't quite get that snorkel to fit just right under the hood, so we're trying to give them the ability to kind of modify that slightly as needed, but they've got to have the basic components there.
Okay.
So if it has an evaporative mat or whatever in there, it's all got to be functional and present, like the EO is spelling out.
Got it. And as most EOs are tied to either VIN or engine family, would be incumbent upon the vehicle owner to supply documentation on what the motor came out of, so the EO is accurate?
It's always helpful.
Okay.
The more documentation a vehicle owner can give us or the builder can give us, the easier it makes it on our referees. These can be really long appointments. These can take an hour or two to run through. So
Been there, yeah.
And it's a big cost to the state to run through these and try to do them right. So, the more documentation, the easier it is to get them in and out of there. But no, I mean, we do have the ability to look up the EOs and things if it's got an EO number somewhere on the part like they're required to do. So try to help out as much as we can.
And the Type 2 style with transmissions, exhaust intake. So in this example on the 08 Jeep, could have easily had a straight 6 4-liter motor in it. We're putting a V8 in it. Intake exhaust. We have 2 exhaust manifolds. We used to have one. Clearly, it's going to be modified. So I know it's got to conform to the LS, but that's kind of in conflict with what this says. Transmissions again, right? If it's an automatic transmission, that Jeep transmission isn't going to directly bolt up to the LS. It's probably adapters and such. But would the automatic transmission from the LS motor be acceptable, or would it have to have the Jeep transmission?
We would much prefer that they keep the transmission that the engine came with.
Okay, the engine, not the vehicle.
Not the vehicle.
Right, which makes sense. Okay, and then exhaust and intake, same idea, right? What the engine came with.
Yeah, and they can. You can kind of see in this example, they have an aftermarket cold air intake on.
Right, I'm shooting. Yeah, EO, right? Yeah, okay.
So they've got, some of the aftermarket cold air intakes give them a little bit more flexibility with that snorkel, so they could kind of fit it in there and get it to work, and it kind of follows the EO on this Jeep. So
okay.
That's what our goal is, to kind of get these ones where they're OBD2 to just really get them in there right.
Great. And then my last question or comment, Type 3 electric vehicle conversions. Mazda Miata was never designed to have a 700-pound battery pack somewhere in it. Are we concerned, or does this come into it at all with that issue, right? That, is the battery secure? Is it safe? On and on, right? We come up with 1,000 safety issues that are potentially a problem. Is that a concern in this process or not?
You have any thoughts on that one? Sorry.
I think it's beyond both BAR and ARB, but I think that's where NHTSA fits in terms of safety requirements and making sure everything is durable and will withstand another 5-10 years, whatever. So I think that's something we would have to kind of let NHTSA be aware of, that maybe if there was a manufacturer that's doing a bunch of these conversions, that maybe they should look at their process and make sure everything is correct.
Seen some scary stuff. So yeah, and I didn't think it would fall under your purview, but yeah, just looking for the clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, and right now at the referee, we're basically looking, is it electric?
Right.
So we aren't really doing safety, and we aren't certifying it to safety.
And you probably, you're not qualified to anyway. So, but yeah, it's an interesting process.
But as things march forward, that's definitely something we've got to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good questions. Yeah, anyone? I saw a hand go up. Any other comments or questions? Charlie Peters.
Yes, Mr. Chairman DeRay and committee, my name is Charlie Peters, Clean Air. I was not here for a portion of it. Asking may not be appropriate. Question is, what happens to the cars that fail? cars fail, who's doing the repairs?
Or anyone?
That's something that I missed.
No, I don't know. I think it's a good question, yeah.
Yeah, so if the cars do not pass at the referee, basically they won't be allowed on the road. So these are upgrades. So these aren't vehicles where we're trying to get them functional. These are vehicles that are going, like the example you gave a minute ago. They're taking an inline 6 out of a Jeep and they're putting a V8 in there because it's more of an enthusiast. It's more of a hobby going on there. So I mean, these all have to go through the referee. They've got to be certified basically before they end up on kind of their first check. It's almost like their certification up front, like ARB does when a new car is sold on the road. Is kind of so it's not a consumer that's trying to get back and forth to work that's going to do this is more of a conversion. So if they were going to put the same V6 in there, or they were going to put a 4-cylinder in there that the Jeep came with, those would not be required to go to the referee. Those would just be a normal smog check system.
So when the vehicle fails, what ends up, they get, I think that was part of his question as well, what ends up happening? And obviously they don't get a certificate and they don't get a referee label and such. Okay.
I can shed a little light.
What's that?
I can shed a little light. So I'm a shop owner. When that happens, the car goes to the referee. Referee says, this isn't good, this isn't good, right? Take it back. Guy comes back to me and we say, okay, this is what they want. This is what we do. Goes back to the referee. Referee says thumbs up, thumb down. That process continues until it's thumbs up for everything, and then it gets certified. So, yeah, I mean, there's no, to my knowledge, there's no, qualification, certification, licensing required to do these types of repairs or these types of modifications and repairs to those, as an example of, repair only or a certified test and repair.
So once that car gets certified and the referee label is placed on the vehicle and gets certified, subsequent inspections do not have to come back to the referee?
Correct. The goal is that we don't have these cars coming back to the referee.
Okay.
We're putting a label on it, and then any smog check station can inspect it from there on out.
Excellent. And how many, I'm kind of looking at Ed Van Mill over here, how many engine changes, roughly speaking, do we see a year in the referee? 700. Okay. More elaboration on your question, Charlie?
Yes. Are those vehicles just described that got time around are they getting an inspection? Are they failing, and who's statistics on failure rate? Fail, and who's fixing them?
Did I hear that correctly? The failure once it's been certified? So downstream inspections? Or is he talking about the inspections at the referee on the initial visit? The secondary. Yeah, downstream.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is downstream. So we certified it, and then 2 years later, when it comes back for the biennial smog, who's testing it at that point, and what are the failure rates at that point?
Sure.
I don't have the failure rates at this point. But we can
Something we can get back to everyone on. Yeah.
But it will be a normal smog check station. That's second.
Bud? Oh, sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Bud Rice.
Bud Rice Quality Tune-Up Shops. I think this would be a great opportunity to provide shops with what I'll call a go, no-go document, where the regulations are one thing, but if the go, no-go document says, if you did this to an engine, follow this. If you did this to an engine, follow that. And the shop guy can just follow down the boxes and get it done correctly. That'd be so much easier than trying to figure out what the intent is of a paragraph. So this, then that, and the guy can just follow the logic board.
I couldn't agree more with you. I've seen a document and it has lots of words, and we'll see. We'll look at putting more boxes with arrows. Yes.
Was that you volunteering to review the document?
It's going to be a long document.
It is. What was the size of the font? I had to bring the readers out.
Oh, I really want it to be
Yeah, let's do something like Bud's suggesting. I like that.
Yeah, we agree, Bud. That's the whole goal of this, is to get it down so that someone, either a consumer can have it, or a shop that's doing the conversion, or a specialty shop, would know exactly what those rules are.
We had some Q&As as well. That was kind of designed along the lines of what Bud's talking about. We're still fleshing those out.
Yeah, we're early in the process. We just wanted to come across the committee and kind of get a chance for you guys to hear what we're thinking and where we're going, to try to help steer us in the right direction.
Others? Any others? All right, thank you both. Our next agenda item is not an actual presentation, it's just a handout, but I will call attention to it. It's the enforcement statistics update. That is the quarterly update that Bill used to present, but I think we decided to, because it was becoming somewhat redundant in some of the same numbers and same statistics and same data, that we thought it would just be good to have a handout. And essentially, they'll look to compare the first 2 quarters, in this case, with the first 2 quarters of last year with our complaint allegations. So everybody can take a look at that at their own leisure. Unless, is this the first that's being handed out? Ah, okay. All right. So if there are any questions or comments, feel free to send them to us. But this is a pretty standard presentation that we've been giving for the last few years. All right, moving right along. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Okay, Mr. Gallo.
Hello. Just a quick comment. We've noticed in this past year, we've had a lot of hearings and a lot of workshops and stuff, and a lot of us have calendars planned way in advance. And lately, some of the notices have been relatively short noticed. And so if we could get a little more lead time on some of these, in some cases we've only had around 10 days or so to respond and to get everybody to the workshop or to the hearing. And I think if we could just be afforded a little more time, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we'll try to give some more notice. I know the 10 days is the kind of the minimum
requirement
time that we observe as part of the Open Meeting and Act requirements, and but we'll look to try and give additional notification for some of those upcoming workshops and hearing dates.
Thank you.
Certainly, with the regulatory hearings, those are set out. Those are set out at the time we do the notice for the 45-day comment period, so that does give you a little more time on those. But workshops, public workshops, and the other type of venues have been traditionally around 10 days, yes. That kind of brings up a point I told Lou when he brought it up and wanted to make sure that I announced it. We have a couple of hearings next week. One is the regulation hearing on the ARD oil change service interval requirements. That's on Monday, April 23rd, I think at 10 a.m. And that'll be at BAR's headquarters. And then, because we knew everybody's spread so thin and got other jobs outside of attending and participating on the advisory group here, we do try to piggyback things that are already in motion or already planned with, if we're planning additional events, try to bunch them together on the same date. So we did have a two hearings actually, that we're looking to schedule in conjunction with the regulatory hearing on Monday, which will be to adopt, we're going to have a hearing to consider the adoption of two of our cases, administrative cases, as precedential. Those hearings will be on two cases, and one is at 11 a.m. following the regulatory hearing, and the other one is at 11:45 a.m. also at BAR's headquarters. I'm not sure. I think the order is one involves a smog check citation that was issued against a licensed smog check inspector and repair technician. And the argument in that case that the administrative law judge upheld and the department ultimately ruled in support of and upheld that proposed decision from the LJ was that the Bureau had provided ample notice and had not performed or had not done an underground regulation in rolling out the implementation and enforcement of the OBD inspection system back in, 2013? It was March 2013. So we're looking to adopt that portion of the decision as precedential. So welcome people to come and weigh in on that on Monday. The second matter that we'll be taking under consideration for possible adoption as a precedential decision is the revocation of a number of licensees, both the owners and the licensed tech, both the licensed smog check inspector and repair technician, which is the standard of proof that is required for revocation of the smog check inspector and repair technician licenses, which have long been established as preponderance of the evidence as opposed to a clear and convincing evidence standard. However, that was with respect to former designations of the current licenses. You'll recall a time in which we had a smog check license that combined the inspector and repair technician licenses, and it also split it up into an enhanced area and a basic area designation. Well, we removed all of that in regulation, those distinctions, and then split the repair and inspector licenses into two. And so that was upheld, and that argument was dismissed, I guess, by the administrative law judge in that case that we'll be hearing on Monday, and then the director's office, the department upheld that decision of the ALJ. So we'll be looking to adopt portions of those two cases on Monday as precedential. Actually, we'll be taking comments at that time and then providing that all the comments we receive, including the Bureau's own comments, and submitting those to the department for consideration of whether to adopt it as precedential or not. We've never done this before. It's precedential in and of itself. I think a couple of boards have done some similar actions. It's certainly not unlike what happens in case law. The Paul's graph case. I can't remember. We always hear about certain cases that are landmark decisions in case law, and similarly, we would be looking to do the same with our administrative cases in these two instances. I think that was it. Those are my comments, or those are my announcements for Monday's hearings. I think there was some questions, so I just wanted to make sure it was clear to everyone at the advisory group meeting today why we were doing this. Any comments or questions about that, or any additional comments about items not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Anapelski.
So, Patrick, these would be the first two precedential decisions adopted by BAR?
Ever, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
And again, it's just a portion of the two cases. In one case, it's the factual findings. I think about 8 paragraphs of the administrative law judge's proposed decision, and then in the other one, another 8 paragraphs on the legal conclusions of the case. Yes, Mr. Peters.
Yes, Mr. DeRay and committee, my name is Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. Seems like I'm a broken record of dissent here. I have in my hand a article at KABC TV, 18th, concerning an auto body issue, and as to what happened and what potentially can happen and how that can be improved. In my opinion, could be a item for next meeting for consideration, in addition to the letter that I provided you today, the letter to the president concerning technology only versus having people involved and seeing if we can't better manage things to create a better outcome. And the second page that I provided to you was what I provided to the Bar Sunset Review, what I provided to them in 2014. Part of that, I came to a conclusion quite a while, and you were there when that took place, and I said, let's stop the Smog Check program, and you got this wide-eyed look on your face. No, I'm lying. But I was asked a question in the hallway after the fact by a previous member of the committee of the Senate Business and Profession Committee. He says, Charlie. I said, yes, sir, GB. He says, you're asking to stop the Smog Check program. Is that really you wanting to have further discussion and you wishing to be at the table? And I said, uh-huh. So what I said in the meeting and what I provided to that committee 4 years ago was that UPS inspections were failing at 90%. And that in a year's period of time, they were passing at 90%. That wasn't true. What really happened was they were failing at 95%, and that 6 months later was failing at 5%. So it was much more effective than I indicated, and I lied because I didn't think anybody would believe that, when in fact it was much more drastic than indicated. Finally, 30 days after the hearing, I had an epiphany. I went, oh, I see. You see, we just had our taxes day that passed, and if we call the IRS and ask a question about your taxes, and you talk to 6 different people at IRS, you probably get at least 7 different answers. That's the way our systems tend to work. In the case with UPS, they're getting information from the car manufacturer, from Fed EPA, from UPS, from the Air Resources Board, the Bureau of Automotive Repair. All of those sources are giving different answers as to what to do. And these vehicles are being modified with engine changes, transmission changes, rear end changes, and very drastic modifications. So what was happening prior to the start of this little program was that total chaos. All the information was coming from everywhere. What ended up happening was Mr. DeRay's employee, who has 2 master's degrees, who was the same guy that says we can do something about improving notification on the wrong platform, was providing the information for my inspections of the UPS cars. They were not giving any instructions as to how to inspect them or how to repair them, but the information going back was consistent and exactly the same information every time. They were not told how to do the job at all, but they got consistent quality information from the Bureau of Automotive Repair as to what they should do, and their behavior changed from 95% failure rate, 5% failure rate in 6 months, just because of a situation that provided respect rather than chaos. So I think that subject matter needs to be on the agenda of this meeting for consideration, so we can show the world that we can, not only are we the best, that we can do even much better than what we do. Thank you, Mr. DeRay.
Bud Rice?
Bud Rice Quality Tune-Up Shops. Two quick comments. The first one, Gary, I'm not sure, were you with Autobody? Did you say you were with Autobody?
Automotive wholesalers, Napa, O'Reilly.
But there's some, Jack, you're with Auto Body, right? Okay. So I think there's an impending uphill battle that's going to be happening before too awful long. And we've had some discussions in past bag meetings regarding sensors that are on vehicles and having damage to those vehicles with a fender bender or something like that. And then getting those cars so that they're repaired correctly so the sensors now work correctly. The challenge I could see for Auto Body has to be gigantic, especially when you're talking about sensors to help vehicles, autonomous vehicles, kind of driving up and down the road. You bump the front, but the back is out of whack. There are huge challenges here that I think maybe we ought to be talking about from time to time, at least getting us up to speed, because I see that as just being a huge problem in the future, and I think we have to help support Auto Body because that we got to help them, and if that's going to be an issue for them and they're going to need help getting it straight, we ought to do everything we can to. So that's my first comment. Second comment is, I think it'd be great if we could speed these processes up in terms of the bag meeting. So I would recommend we put a chair over there and a chair over here, and Charlie could sit over there, and I could sit over here, and we could just move the microphone around and really speed things up a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate the comments. All right. Yeah, we certainly can look to add something to the future bag meeting on the challenges that are going to be faced with repairing some of these collision vehicles or vehicles that have been involved in a collision, especially that relates to some of the sensors and such. I think ICAR or Bar did a presentation. Maybe there's kind of a refresher would be good. I saw Gene kind of acknowledge that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I would like to add that I'm absolutely in agreement with you. If our collision repair industry doesn't figure out how to properly repair vehicles of today's standards, there's a lot of challenges in front of us. The opportunity for injuries and concerns for safety are great. And I really would recommend that this becomes more of a conversation at these bar meetings. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. Hi, Gene Lopez with Seidner's Collision Center. And Bud, thank you for leading me into this. So I've got a couple of items that I'd like to bring up. And one of them is ADAS, or Advanced Driver Assist Systems. And the ADAS is what Bud was referring to with these sensors. And the sensors are anything from a Doppler radar on a vehicle to cameras that won't allow a vehicle to depart from the lane that they're in. If anyone's rented a late model vehicle, I was in one in Denver last week, try to change lanes without turning on the signal, and the vehicle will fight you back. It will resist changing lanes. So if that module and those two side view mirrors weren't activated properly, and I was used to that, or I'm a driver who depended on that, and it doesn't work, I could either move into a lane where another vehicle is at, or go into the median and crash the car. So the point of that is that in order to recognize whether or not a vehicle is equipped with the ADAS or other modules on it, we need to scan vehicles. And it wasn't until August, about midsummer of 2016, when a half a dozen or more vehicle manufacturers put out position statements regarding pre-scanning the vehicle prior to repairs, and then post-scanning vehicles when repairs were completed and the vehicle was reassembled. The reason for bringing it up is this increases these scan procedures, increases the cost of the repair. So severity moves in as much as $200 to $300 per repair, and so those paying for those repairs, in essence, for the most part, an insurance company, there's a little pushback right now, and we've heard in some cases where they refuse to make that include that cost in the repair. So we have to take a look at that. I think that for the most part, insurers they're accepting this new process, and they understand that in order to achieve a complete, safe, and quality repair, the pre-scan and the post-scan has to take place. But we still need to keep that in the forefront, and I'm glad that Bud brought that up. Furthermore, when we're looking at these vehicles with the advanced systems on them, we're typically talking about a vehicle that's 2014, 2015, and newer. And that leads me to my point of today is the CCR 3365, which I have here, and it looks like it was last updated in October of 1997. And so now here we are some 30 years later, and we are about to drive a smart car. And so may I read this? So subsection 3365, auto body and frame repairs. It says that accepted trade standards. Okay, this is a standard, something that everyone agrees on. The accepted trade standards for good and workmanlike auto body and frame repairs shall include but not be limited to the following. A. Repair procedures included but not limited to the sectioning of component parts shall be performed in accordance with OEM surface specifications or nationally distributed and periodically updated surface specifications that were generally accepted by the auto body repair industry. And furthermore, it goes on to talk about corrosion. And all corrosion protection shall be applied in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications or nationally distributed and periodically updated service specifications that are generally accepted by the auto body industry. And so the concern here is now 30 years later that that what was generally accepted in 1986 perhaps isn't generally accepted in 2018, and that when a vehicle manufacturer puts a position statement that says they recommend or suggest versus require because of whatever their lawyers say they have, what kind of language they can put out there, typically means do this otherwise. And so we need to learn more about these recommendations, about these position statements, and that the trade standards are no longer what they were 30 years ago. And so when some OEMs they state they do not approve of an LKQ part like kind or quality, or a used part or an aftermarket part, whether it's bolted on or welded on, we need to define something that's an acceptable trade standard, whether or not to install that part. So we have to be careful about what we've done in the past and what we're doing in the future, and we have to look at who defines generally accepted. And is that by the repair? Is it by the repair industry, whether it's iCar or the repair shop or an adjuster out in the field representing an insurance company, or by the vehicle manufacturer? So if we could look at all of those and maybe get some interpretation by this agency, so that when we're making these repairs, that we always have the consumer in mind for a complete, safe, and quality repair. Thank you.
As always, thank you, Gene. I might throw out the idea of maybe having a workshop on this.
Good.
Yeah. It seems like it's, just another presentation isn't going to necessarily allow for enough time to hear from everybody and dig into it. Okay.
We'd like to see that.
Okay.
Gene, I just want to say you're spot on right. We really have to, as an industry, try to figure out what needs to be done. And I would even argue it's not even 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, the way vehicles have changed. We have to figure out a way to work with the industry to make sure that they are following their OE procedures first and foremost. Okay, those should always be the first place a collision repair facility or the insurance company should be looking at is the OE procedures. Because vehicles today that recognized proper way of fixing cars isn't going to work today. It's not going to work today. That position statement that you read there is outdated and probably needs to be reviewed and updated to recognize that today general recommended procedures isn't going to work today. So I absolutely agree with you, and if you want to create a workshop, I would absolutely love to be on it with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on Gene's comments and Keith's as well, I think it goes without saying that we can look at the entire Automotive Repair Act and look at the importance of upgrading many sections of the Automotive Repair Act, because so many of them are stale dated based all the way back to 1971. And I think it behooves all of us as a group, as an advisory committee, to work with BAR and work on updating many of these regulations and many of the rules, because to Gene's point and Keith's point, I mean, technology is moving at light speed. And we're working on regulations and rules of this industry that's taking us, in some cases, 4 and 5 years to get these rules and regulations done. But I think the important thing is to look at the rules and regulations that we're working with today that are really, in essence, stale dated, and work diligently to bring them up to today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. One more. Charlie.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. DeRay, committee. This is an associated issue that the governor has indicated as a priority issue, which is issues of global warming, and specifically issues of incorporating corn whiskey, corn liquor in our gasoline. And this is a response that I got from a gentleman at the city this morning with some attached documentation. I would suggest the possibility of having an item on our committee to have appropriate discussion from the Fed and the state or whoever is appropriate to address these issues of mandated use of corn liquor in our gasoline, which is going in our cars and having very possibly having a significant an issue with the performance of the car, the NOx, a whole lot of factors on the environmental impact of the car and what it's going to look like in the future. And we have very significant debate going on at the federal level, at the state level, and internationally as we speak, even issues with China and so on and so forth. And this is a subject we think, as Gallo had indicated, things are moving quickly, and we think this is on the agenda for our consideration. And I'll leave a copy of what I'm faxing out as we speak.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, one last announcement before we adjourn here. We are following the advisory group meeting today with a workshop that'll begin at 2 p.m. in this room. It's scheduled for 2 hours, or as long as the business takes us. If it ends earlier, that is fine as well. But we are scheduled for up to 2 hours here in the room, and it'll be webcast as well. The workshop will be dedicated to the proposed introduction of permanent diagnostic trouble codes, or PDTCs, into the Smog Check program. There's a little more elaboration on it on the back of the agenda for the advisory group meeting. That is it, other than, we have a comment? No? Oh, next BAR advisory group meeting. Yes, thank you, Zach. I had to move up the meeting date because of a vacation that I have planned the following week, so we initially had it scheduled for the week, I don't know, July 20th or somewhere around there, but July 19th, we moved it up a week to July 12th. It'll be here or at the other building, DCA headquarters number 2 across the parking lot. So July 12th, 2018 will be our third quarter Advisory Group meeting. All right. That should conclude our meeting. I want to thank again all of the field office supervisors from the Bureau of Automotive Repair for attending the meeting today. Do you think you'll want to come back for another one? Was it riveting? Yes. Thank you for all the great work you do. We really appreciate it at bar headquarters. I do. In particular, want to point out the outstanding work you and your staff do each and every day. So thank you for being here. We are adjourned, and we'll see some of you at the workshop at 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.